this will also increase. You can see the winds there.
Those boats have all been pulled up.
Yeah, that does. That boat doesn't even look like it belongs there. That boat looks like it was part of the canal and is now drifting away at some point.
Their boat boxes have washed up, the seawalls.
The seawalls are covered up. So this is part of the Rubicon Canal at Raven Canal, and we're starting to see more water move on in. So now we watch Cape Coral and how far up north it goes. Rob.
So to continue on here, you know, what Allison's showing you there with that live camera on the Raven Canal, if you're in this position right now where you're concerned about how long will the storm surge event continue, it continues until the onshore winds begin to relax or change and no longer be onshore. But that's going to take at least, it appears, a solid 24 hours. You know, this is a look at future windcasts through this evening. They're onshore nearly everywhere in southwest Florida's coast, and they stay onshore for the remainder of the night tonight. This goes all the way through 9 o'clock tonight. Notice how strong the onshore wind component is as the eye of our hurricane still only chugs along there to the north-northeast at 9 miles an hour. This takes us later into night, and again, the big picture things, they don't change. The wind speed may not be nearly as strong as it was earlier, but the wind direction continues. You know, I'm just thinking to myself, for the people who are watching us without electricity, if you're listening to us on the simulcast, on the radio with our radio partners, I'll read off the numbers here so you can get some perspective to visualize this in your head if you're not able to watch us because you're listening to us on the radio. You're looking at futurecast, windcast through 11 o'clock tonight, and the wind values are all onshore. Western-oriented winds with sustained and up to wind gusts here between 25 and likely 40-plus miles per hour. And it continues this way all the way into early Thursday. Through 6 a.m. on Thursday, we continue to have an onshore push of wind. Winds may be a bit weaker than they are, you know, in just a couple of hours from now, but the hurricane force winds are gone. But it's difficult for the storm surge waters to recede when they have this continual onshore push of air. So all the way through 6 a.m. Thursday, all the way through 11 a.m. Thursday, the onshore winds continue, meaning it will be difficult for the storm surge flooded areas to see the water recede. And then it really takes us until about Friday before the winds start to relax a bit. But even at that, there is still a western component to the breeze here, so there will still be air pushing water toward the shoreline here as we work through the next probably day and a half until hopefully our wind direction is able to change around a touch. If I may, could I pass things over to ABC7 Chief Meteorologist John Patrick? Oh, I apologize. I'm going to send things over to my colleagues Megan and Jeff at the news desk then. Thank you.
Good evening, Southwest Florida. It's Jeff Butera and Megan Miller here in the NBC2 studio. We are simulcasting on NBC2 and ABC7, as well as a good many of you are probably listening on multiple radio stations throughout Southwest Florida if you have lost power, and we'll keep you up to date on what the situation is with power outages.
And so far today, we have seen devastating impacts from Hurricane Ian, described as worst case scenario that we have. It's just devastating to see some of the impacts, and we are still riding this thing out.
It is hard to put into words the amount of devastation that we're seeing, and I don't think we are exaggerating by suggesting that those words are appropriate at this point. Before we get to showing you some of what's happening around Southwest Florida, I want to reset what we're planning to do. We've got the 5 o'clock advisory coming in. Our meteorologist will be handling that and what it's going to mean for this storm. We are also awaiting a news conference from Lee County EOC talking about the response from the county specifically to Lee County and what's happening here. At this point, we are going to start showing you some of the video that's happening around here. And let's go ahead and see that. Keith, what is this again? This is Town and River. And it really gives you a sense of how high the water is at this point, how high the storm surge has been. Just think for a second at the houses that you're looking at and where the water is compared to those houses and how far the water has gone up.
And next, we're going to take a look at Sanibel Dunes. I believe we have some pictures from there to show you as well. Take a look. That's what we're seeing at Sanibel Dunes. This entire area has just been devastated. The storm surge, a big threat. Of course, these winds as well. And we want to make sure you're aware, all of Lee County right now is under a boil water advisory. It's something that is to be expected when a major storm hits. But as a precaution, you'll need to boil any water. That's a big reason why it's important to have water bottles during a storm like this.
One of the things that caught my attention this afternoon, it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I happened to see a video from Sanibel. So I went to the Sanibel live traffic cameras. In fact, it was this particular intersection that I was watching. This is Casa Ebel, right here on Sanibel. And we're looking at a time-lapse video showing you what happened. These are roads. This is not supposed to be a lake, but it turned into a lake this afternoon. And boy, oh boy, does that give you a sense of what happened to Sanibel, perhaps my most favorite area in all of Southwest Florida, one of the most beautiful areas you'll find in the entire world. And right now, there are major water issues. When you watch this, you have to hope that people heeded the warning and got out of Sanibel before they had to deal with this, because once this happened, there was no getting out.
And that didn't take long. I mean, it was early in the day that the east side of Sanibel just was overtaken by water out there. Through this, in some neighborhoods, we've seen very large fish floating through this. At one point, someone thought it was a shark. It turned out to be a tarpon, I believe. But let's go out to Matt Lachey. Wow, just look at those waves and the wind whipping those trees. That storm surge coming up over that pool at points. And for a lot of people, they were dealing with this storm surge beating into their windows. Kelly and Peter were talking about the folks they talked to on Fort Myers Beach as well. It was really the most devastating thing I think a lot of us have seen in a while, seeing these folks with those waves coming up in and hitting their second floor window. And they felt like they didn't have any higher land to go to. So in this situation, looks like, you know, maybe the water was a little lower, but still very threatening storm surge, just unbelievable.
The next piece of video we want to show you is the LCSO Command Center. Go ahead and take a look. This almost looked like a floating barge. It almost looked like a boat that was moving down the road. But that is actually a mobile outreach center that is supposed to be on the ground. And instead, it just kept floating down the road. Unbelievable video from Fort Myers Beach, where they have had major issues. In fact, we've talked to some people on Fort Myers Beach this evening, and they talked about how backup water systems have failed. They are dealing with so much storm surge. A great portion of that island is basically underwater at this point. I can tell you, and we're going to have an interview coming up here very shortly, but I talked to a couple on the phone on Fort Myers Beach. They live on Coconut Drive. This afternoon, their house started to crumble, and they made the decision that they needed to get out, which was a good one, because the house ended up in the water. They ended up in the water. They wound up swimming next door to their next door neighbor's house. They climbed through the second-story window, and that's where they are right now, hoping that this passes and that the water level does not continue to rise on them. Again, you're going to hear from them coming up very shortly, but Fort Myers Beach, just looking at the video, you get a sense of what has happened there, and then you hear the stories and you realize perhaps staying was not the best choice.
And those communities near the beach, Iona, for example, Keith, our producer, I don't know if we have any video of that we can show in a bit, but some of those folks that live close to those island communities, they have water in their house. It sounds like everyone is okay that I've spoken with in Iona, but just some serious water they're dealing with in their house. And right now, this is in Iona, Keith? Okay, so take a look. You're looking at Iona right now. Again, sometimes it seems people aren't as worried about storm surge if they're not right on the coast, but this is just a bit inland where they are seeing some major flooding in the Iona area. Right now, our team of meteorologists, they are going through the new 5 o'clock advisory. So the big thing to remember too is this isn't over. A lot of our communities, Charlotte County and up north, are just starting to feel some impacts from this. And it's really important to know it's still not safe to go outside. And the first responders are going to get out to folks as soon as they can. But when we talked to them just a few hours ago, they said that their crews could not get to you, and they're going to prioritize people that are having medical emergencies. still, call 911 if you are in need of help, if you're in need of dire help. But those call systems are becoming overwhelmed.
Yeah, the terminology that was used in the last update that I saw was emergency triage. They are essentially preparing to go out on the streets, and what they want to do is prioritize the people that are in most dire straits so that they can get to them first. But it's an unfortunate reality, and they admitted that harsh reality that at this point, they can't go out on the streets because it might make the situation worse and take more first responders off the street if they wind up in an emergency. As we continue to show you what's happening around Southwest Florida and what we've been seeing here in the ABC 7 and NBC 2 newsrooms throughout the afternoon, I did want to keep you updated on power outage situations. The last update that we had Lee County with power outages, about 115,000 people, 84,000 in Collier, 28,000 in Charlotte. I'm assuming that those have gone up at this point. I did talk to FPL on the phone earlier this afternoon, and they said something that I think is going to get your attention. I talked to spokesman Jack Ebel, and he said, look, ideally, you would like to be just restoring power, but in this situation, we may have to do something larger than that. In fact, I believe we have the soundbite with Jack Ebel. This is from FPL when he talked to me earlier this afternoon.
Hurricane Ian's catastrophic winds will mean that parts of our system will need to be rebuilt, not restored. And that's why we're asking for our customers' patience and to prepare for extended outages.
I thought that was the takeaway right there at the end. Prepare for extended outages. I specifically asked them, is it possible at this point to have a sense of whether we're talking about just a couple days without power or whether we're talking about multiple weeks without power? And he said, honestly, that's a determination we can't make, but they want people to understand the reality that perhaps this system has to be rebuilt. By the way, if you are without power or someone you know is without power, we are currently simulcasting on multiple radio stations throughout Southwest Florida. This might be a good time to write them down, and I'm going to go through them. There are 8 different radio stations that we have made deals with so that they will continue to have our coverage for anybody who can't be watching either on the live stream or on regular television, and here they are. 96.1, 98.1, 98.9, 101.9, 102.9, 103.9, 104.7, and 106.3. Those are all FM stations across Southwest Florida that will continue to carry our broadcast. One of the things we'll try to do is make sure we're as descriptive as possible, understanding that some of you may be only listening to what we can say, but not able to see what we're showing you.
And another thing to keep in mind, if you do happen to have power right now, is charging those devices. If you have portable chargers, to use those. I can't stop thinking about some of the people that we've talked to at points today, but those folks on Fort Myers Beach that you may have seen us talking to, that were stuck in their second-story home, their phone died. Mm-hmm. We have tried to follow up with them. We have made sure the fire officials we have spoken to have their address and know what's going on there. Mm-hmm. But it is just incredibly devastating to sit here and wonder. And I know we've had people that have had trouble communicating with family members around here, so
that's their lifeline at this point, and unfortunately, if the device dies, it's one lifeline that gets taken away. But as Megan said, we have communicated the address of the people that we talked to, at least. Here's a quick update. We mentioned there was a 5 o'clock update coming from Lee County EOC. That has been now moved to 5:30. Our intention will be to take you there at 5:30 when that happens. Right now, we're going to take you next door to the ABC 7 studio and our chief meteorologist at ABC 7, John Patrick. Hey, JP.
Hello there, Jeff and Megan, and we did get in the 5 o'clock advisory, you know, as most of Southwest Florida is experiencing right now. We're having internet issues and data issues occasionally, so it took us a little bit to actually go through the advisory, get it ingested into the computer, but here it is. And a little piece of news that is not good is the forward speed of this storm. It's actually slowed down 1 mile per hour. It's now down to 8 miles per hour, you can see here. One piece of good news is the storm is now down to 140. It was 150 and now is down to 140, of course 155 earlier today. So we are seeing the storm weakening, but we're also seeing the storm slowing down its forward speed, which is not good news. We want this storm out of here as quickly as possible because we don't want the storm surge event that has already ensued to be prolonged. This is going to be an hours, if not a couple of days, storm surge event. By the time we work this all the way from south to north and the winds subside and turn direction enough that that water can come back out into the Gulf of Mexico, it's going to be a long time before all that happens. But that's the 5 o'clock advisory, 26.9 north, 82.0 west. 140 miles per hour, moving to the north-northeast at 8 miles per hour. Again, still a Category 4 system here. I'm going to switch over to our radar and satellite imagery, and I wanted to show this to you. Despite the fact that this thing is completely on land right now, I want you to look, watch this loop. So this is the eye right here. As it comes on land, it is going to start to fall apart. But look up here, we're still popping lightning strikes. Not as many over the last about 15 to 20 minutes as we were, but even over land, this Eyewall wants to strengthen. We're going to start to see that process deteriorate over the next couple of hours as this is now completely on land. But I mean, look at that. And these yellow lightning strikes that you see here, that we'll do one more loop here. These lightning strikes that you'll see pop up here, the yellow ones are lightning strikes that have happened within the last 3 minutes. So these are very, very recent lightning strikes, and a couple more, looks like, popped up there in northwest and DeSoto County. So despite the fact that this thing is onshore, it wants to still try to strengthen. All right, now I'm going to switch over to our live radar and track where this is going for you here. The heaviest of the rain bands in the outer Eyewall right now are still in Englewood, still in Northport, still over Murdoch, still over El Jobin. Right there's the Port Charlotte Town Center. Right there, a very busy, very populated area in northwest of Port Charlotte. Port Charlotte is starting to see that Eyewall lift away. So what's going to happen is and you're kind of on the western edge of it, so this is going to be kind of a slow process, and you may not get directly in the Eyewall in Port Charlotte, possibly even Punta Gorda. So what this means is you're not going to see as much of that calm as people in Tropical Gulf Acres or Fort Ogden are going to see. Fort Ogden, that weather is starting to get a little bit better temporarily. As I mentioned before, if you think about this hurricane like a football game, so this is the first half, the eye is halftime, and we still have the second half of the storm to get through. And, you know, we can see some hurricane force winds on the south side, especially like we're seeing right now. There's the outer portion, the southwestern portion of that Eyewall is moving right now over Captiva Island. Let me go ahead and turn on our wind velocity here because I'm interested to see what kind of a wind we're producing here over Captiva Island. And we're going to pixel query that right now. I'll see that. Keep in mind, this is 6,367 feet off the ground. So if you were to extrapolate that down to the surface, it is going to be a bit less than that, but we're still looking 120 to 130 out here at that point on Captiva Island right now. So the south side of this means business just like the north side. So just because you may be in the eye of the hurricane right now, do not go outside because as evident right there on that little plot, well, now it just went down to another pixel there. So, as is evident, there are hurricane force winds, even though this is doing some really weird stuff as we get the updates in here. There's still hurricane force winds on the south side of that storm. So don't let your guard down. Don't go outside if that Eyewall is going to pass over you because you've got the second half of this hurricane to go through. And that's in this wind, these hurricane force winds now are getting slammed right up against our coastline, even more so than they were before the eye passed. When we had that persistent south wind, now it's going to be right up against our coastline and right up the middle of our beaches, and that's what's going to start our storm surge event here right up to Caloosahatchee. We're going to start seeing those winds go up the waterways there and bring in water from the Gulf of Mexico, and the same thing eventually as we get into Charlotte Harbor and the Peace River. And not to the extent of the Peace River, the Myakka River, because the Myakka River kind of runs northwest. And so, yes, some water is going to get funneled up that way, but most of it is going to want to go naturally up the Peace River because that's oriented northeast, the same direction that the water is being pushed. So let me go ahead and track the bottom side of this eye. So the beginning of the second eye wall here, because Cape Coral, you're going to be in on this as well. And now we're down to 8 miles an hour. I wanted to track 9, but now we're down to 8 miles an hour for the forward speed on this. We're going to take this out here 120 minutes, so that would be 2 hours. And you can see here on the board, we've got Cayo Costa at 5:34, so 5:20, well, we'll say, yeah, 5:20 because it's been a long day and I don't want to do the math. It's 5:20 right now and 30 seconds. So you've got 14 minutes, 13 and a half minutes there, Cayo Costa. Flamingo Bay at 5:43, 6:03 at Port Boca Grande, Pineland at 6:15, Matlacha 6:16, Cape Coral at 6:21, and Bokeelia at 6:35. That's when this part 2 of the hurricane is going to start moving through those areas. And we've got all those areas I mentioned here plotted on the dots. But if you're listening to us on radio, you can't see the northeasterly movement of this. Again, those times, Cayo Costa at 5:34. Flamingo Bay at 5:43, Port Boca Grande at 6:03, Pineland at 6:15, Matlacha at 6:16, Cape Coral at 6:21, and Bokeelia at 6:35. That's the arrival time of that southern eye wall. I want to go ahead and for anybody that's listening or watching around Northport, you know, the real bad news about Minnesota and Englewood and Northport is as the center of the storm moves northeast, this western side of the eye wall is also moving northeast. This is what's down awaiting to pass through all these areas. It's not as intense, but it's still hurricane force winds around Punta Gorda Beach and Englewood and Minnesota up toward Northport. This is still going to go right over you. You know, I've got friends in Venice and Northport, and I'm hoping that they're all in their safe place right now and staying safe. But we've got a long time before you get out of this. I mean, at least another 2 hours of this because this is moving slowly. And keep in mind, this is the portion of the storm, the center, which is moving off to the northeast. That western eye wall is going to train over those same areas over and over again, for at least the next 2 hours before we see any kind of improvement. And then that's terrible news. I mean, the one thing is you're not going to see a storm surge event because those winds are coming from the northeast. So it's pushing the water from the Gulf of Mexico out. The center of that storm is going to pass to your east. So we're not looking for that big storm surge event. I mean, there may be a little bit, but not as bad as what we're seeing Fort Myers Beach, what we're going to see in Charlotte County and Naples. I mean, we've seen some just atrocious storm surge so far, nothing like I've ever seen, and I've been doing this since 1997. So that's what we're looking at right now as far as where the storm is and where we're headed over the next couple of hours. And the 5 o'clock advisory, again, it's a little slower, moving at 8 miles an hour to the north-northeast and a 140-mile-an-hour hurricane right now. Keith, where are we going next? We're going to send it back over to Jeff and Megan at the desk.
Thank you very much, JP. And we are a couple of minutes away from the Lee County EOC giving an update and a briefing on their response to Hurricane Ian. Right now, we want to get you some updates on what's happening with storm surge. And this is just new information that's going to give you a sense of how severe the storm surge has been along our coast. Here is the first update, and it has to do with Solaris Healthcare Imperial. This is on Vanderbilt Beach. They are reporting to us that water is rising rapidly within 2 feet of their facility. They have 86 residents. They have 60 staff members. So that's not a wonderful thing happening outside of Solaris Healthcare Imperial. And
let's talk about Everglades City. We saw earlier, if you weren't with us, they were doing some airboat rescues out there. And from what I understand, those were not first responders. That was just some folks that had an airboat and were trying to help people who were dealing with the high water there. So in Everglades City, we have confirmation. Sounds like more airboat rescues are happening there.
Naples Fire Station is having major issues. As you take a look at what's happening, they have been dealing with significant issues, completely flooded. Almost all of the equipment has significant water damage. I saw some of the video earlier this afternoon, and I can imagine that most of their equipment is damaged because the water was inside of that fire station.
We got some information from NCH North, their Naples hospital around Naples Bay. Their ambulance bay and helipad is under several feet of water there. Emergency departments are accessible through their alternate entrance there in NCH North Naples Hospital.
And real quick, before we get back over to NBC2 Chief Meteorologist Allison Ray, here is an update from the Naples Municipal Airport. We reported last night that they were closed, but they do have an EMS station there. The EMS station has been evacuated due to rising water on the roadways. Just 5 examples of the storm surge and the impact it's having across Southwest Florida. For more context, let's go over to NBC2 Chief Meteorologist Allison Ray.
And so here's the even worse news, and we've already been hearing across the region. These are just reports that we're able to get from some type of lines of communication. Lines of communication are going by the wayside pretty fast. So we are going to continue to see these reports come in into the overnight hours. Once the weather is a bit on the more safe side, it will still take a few hours. We will try to see what the damage is, but it may take until tomorrow morning because as we see somewhat of improving weather conditions, and that's only wind-wise, not storm surge-wise, the wind threat, severe wind threat, will start to diminish as the storm pushes off to the north and east. The storm surge threat will continue. The onshore wind threat will continue, but we're not going to be able to really assess how bad Ian just wrecked our homes and our community until tomorrow. I do want to show you, we're going to zoom in around the country, or excuse me, around the county in just a moment, and we are going to have some video, but I do want to show you the winds. And JP talked about this before, how they're going offshore. The wind and the rain is still rather relentless, and I'm concerned that we're going to have some severe flooding concerns in parts of DeSoto and Charlotte County and even near Northport. That is an area that had flooding from Elsa and also from a storm earlier from 2020. But we do have offshore, excuse me, this is way ahead of time. This is from last Saturday. So I'm going to go over, Rob, why don't I, while I get this graphic ready, why don't I show you, let's pop up our tower cam if we can.
I can take care of that for a moment.
Yeah.
While you fix the graphics here, Allison, I wanted to mention here as we get it, another emergency alert. Let me just read this as it comes into my phone here. The National Weather Service continues the extreme wind warning for this area. We're, of course, broadcasting from Fort Myers in Lee County. They say the immediate danger of life-threatening winds until at least 7:30 p.m. tonight. You know, if you haven't been already, you need to take cover now in an interior room of a sturdy building away from windows. Protect your head from flying debris. Do not go out in the calm of the Hurricane Eye, which is moving across Charlotte and DeSoto, as winds will become quickly dangerous again. So that message related especially to the people in Charlotte County, DeSoto County, and Sarasota County, where the eye of this hurricane continues to move on land. For folks in Fort Myers, the wind threat is still very present for us. And something I wanted to point out here is that if you could take the tower camera, go back to tower camera, or I can route it up here on Doppler too. Some pretty big tree damage here in parts of Fort Myers, and it looks like, at least on this perspective off of Fowler, almost all the leaves have been ripped off all these trees here that run up along Fowler. Something you oftentimes see, it was very evident in the wake of Hurricane Maria over Puerto Rico. The tree canopy destruction there, with a number of the leaves being ripped clean off the trees. And it looks like there might have been some of that effect here in Fort Myers as we scan across the sky here. Again, wind gusts have been in excess of 100 miles an hour across parts of our community. You don't see much structural damage, though, at least from the perspective that we have here from this tower camera on top of the live Doppler radar here at NBC2 and ABC7, but certainly some substantial damage caused by wind as this hurricane continues to move to the north-northeast at a snail's pace, Allison, just 9 miles an hour. It looks like there's some tree damage there across the street here in the city of Fort Myers,
there's a lot of
the way at that apartment complex.
Yeah,
Typically, that's really green, and look how brown, and major destruction to the tree canopy there in that part of Fort Myers.
Right, and that's what Chief Meteorologist John Patrick was saying with that 5 o'clock advisory. It has slowed down to 8 miles per hour, so that's why that extreme wind warning continues. So even as we kind of still deal with that storm surge for parts of Lee and Collier County, we are going to still see that very high wind. It's still going to be a really rough evening for parts of Charlotte County and into DeSoto County. Here's a look at those wind speeds and how they're going to fare over the next few hours and really few days. We are going to go through some high tide cycles and low tide cycles, so we will see some changes in the water levels, but it's going to take a while to really start to see these wind down a bit. This is 5 o'clock today. This is where our current look. We're still looking at the eye of the storm, which we notice is still quite strong. We want this to really start to weaken in a hurry. It's not there yet. It doesn't want to worry. We're looking at wind. These are sustained winds, so that constant wind speed over the course of a minute, the average, not just the wind gust. And we're looking at 45 up to 50 mile per hour winds still onshore in parts of Bonita, Estero Bay, and even through parts of Naples. By tomorrow morning, we still have a breezy day. We still have an uncomfortable day or with winds out of the west, 20 to 25 miles per hour. And then Thursday afternoon, starting to see maybe somewhat improving conditions. Even though the wind is onshore, it's not going to be at an angle that is as devastating as the onshore winds that would be out of the south or the southwest. So we have 10 to 15 mile per hour winds for Thursday and still breezy. The seas will be pretty choppy until possibly this weekend. We're looking at 15, 20 miles per hour for Friday afternoon. Those onshore winds will continue. So right now, the big message is that for Charlotte County, that high wind warning continues. Wind gusts well over 100. If your power is somehow still on, power outages will be likely in the path of the storm, continuing into parts of Northport and eventually into Arcadia. We have another few hours to send it, to wait until Ian is really north of our region, and we'll assess more damage. Keith, I have Keith. All right, let's go over to Jeff and Megan.
Hey everybody, we have some breaking news, and it has to do with curfews. That's been something that multiple cities and counties have been talking about over the last couple of minutes, and they have issued curfews throughout. We're going to run through them right now, and Megan's going to start.
So let's talk about Charlotte County. The whole county there is under a curfew, 9 p.m. to 6 a.m.
We also just got word from Marco Island that Marco Island has instituted a curfew. This one's a little bit different, though. It starts immediately and runs until 6 a.m. Fort Myers has a curfew starting at 6 p.m., so in the next half hour or so. Right now, we want to take you to a live news conference. This is Lee County EOC talking about response. Let's go live.
I am sad to tell you that while we don't know the full extent of the damage to Lee County right now, we are beginning to get a sense that our community has been, in some respects, decimated. We know that there is tremendous damage on Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach. We know that LCEC, 75% of their customers are without power. 80% of the FPL customers are without power. We don't know yet because we can't, the storm is still too strong. We don't know yet the extent of the damage to our local infrastructure, whether it's the electrical grid or the utility systems. We know that the utility systems that Lee County is responsible for, we have multiple line breaks throughout the county. But we're not yet able to get to them to, first of all, just identify exactly where they are, and then secondarily, how to go about fixing them. So I want to provide you with an update as best we can for the moment. And so the storm continues to pass through Lee County, and we know it has done extreme damage to the area because the weather condition is too dangerous. We just can't. We can't get our public works crews out on the road to begin first pass to clear debris that is blocking some of the roads. We do expect to have extensive infrastructure damage. We know the roads that are unsafe will be unsafe after the storm, and we'll ask you to stay where you are until we can understand the extent of the damage and the conditions that everyone's going to have to deal with. Because of all of that, we will be enacting a curfew tonight at 6 p.m. And the curfew includes unincorporated areas of Lee County as well as all of the cities, with the exception of Estero. And the only reason I say city of Estero is because we've not been able to contact them to see if that is something they agree to. We are working very closely with the Board of County Commissioners, with the Sheriff's Office, and the cities and their law enforcement agencies. Earlier today, when law enforcement was unable to respond because of the weather conditions, it was unsafe, there was a break-in on Cleveland Avenue, and there was looting, and there was a group of people, don't know a lot about it yet, who just had their way. I think it was with one of the Speedway gas stations, or one of those. And so the city of Fort Myers, they, and I think wisely so, called to talk about a curfew. After consulting with Sheriff Marcino and County Commission and some city managers and their city councils, we made the decision to enact that curfew today. It will be in place until further notice. We don't. Our best information right now is that the storm is not going to begin to leave Lee County area and make it safe to actually even be on the roads until 5 a.m. Well, at 5 a.m. it's still dark, and we don't know what kind of down power lines there are. We don't know what kind of condition the bridges are going to be in. They all have to be inspected before we can start using them again. I apologize. Come on, stop. Betsy, will you throw those away? Thank you. We just don't we just don't know you. We don't have that information. So the curfew will be in place till further notice. It will be enforced by law enforcement. Exceptions will be, of course, people who are seeking health care, going to work, going to school, going to the grocery store. Otherwise, in conversations with the sheriff and others, there'll be a lot of common sense that is exercised, but to be sure, and I feel safe relaying this on behalf of law enforcement, there's going to be zero tolerance policy for looting and violence in this town. We probably, and we'll know very soon, we probably had more damage caused by this storm than any time I can remember during my time in Lee County, which is a long, long time. The Sheriff's Office is coordinating with all the other law enforcement agencies, and we'll begin enforcing the curfew as soon as weather conditions permit. The curfew, of course, does not apply to first responders and emergency workers. And so now I'd like to introduce Ben Abus, our Public Safety Director for Emergency Medical Services, to give you an update on issues that he's dealing with.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you all for being here today. This is an important update for everyone in Lee County, and it's coming from those of us here at the Emergency Operations Center who are coordinating the response efforts. Devastating impacts continue to occur as Hurricane Ian crosses Lee County. These impacts will continue to be felt throughout the night. We urge the community to continue to monitor information from the National Weather Service, as well as reports from local meteorologists. We need the public to know that we are receiving and tracking 911 calls and engaging with every caller. We are categorizing them and prioritizing them so first responders can act as soon as the hurricane passes. We are aware of a number of calls of people who are stranded due to high water. However, we are faced with conditions that make it impossible to respond right now. For example, just before 5 p.m., there were recorded gusts of 135 miles per hour at the Cape Coral Yacht Club. And it's not just coastal flooding that we're facing. We're seeing flooding inland in areas we know have flooded before. If you have water coming in your home, call 911 and seek the highest spot possible. We want you to know that we have spent today here at the EOC putting in place rescue operations to assist people who are stranded by high water and storm surge. And we are engaging all partners at every level, from local, state, and national, to rescue everyone as quickly as possible. This is a scary situation, and we completely understand that. We urge you not to panic. If you can remain safe where you are, our first responder community urges you to stay there. If you or your neighbors or your loved ones are not safe, we want you to understand what we're doing to get to you and get you to safety. Our county leaders are working with federal urban search and rescue teams from across the country. These are experts trained in all types of rescue scenarios. They are on the way, and they will be here as soon as the hurricane conditions allow them to complete their travel into the Lee County area. The State Emergency Operations Center has helped us today with expediting this mission. Florida Urban Search and Rescue Task Force units are coordinated and stand by to come and help us get to you. The plan is moving forward right now, led by first responder and fire representatives here inside the Emergency Operations Center. Finally, we expect to receive assistance from identified federal and military entities who are skilled in rescues in areas that are hardest to reach. And this includes using boats, high water vehicles, and helicopters. Once more, please know that we are with you. We are all part of our community. Our loved ones are here, our homes are here, and we are here. And we are going to get through this together. We will be ready to provide this coordinated response for our community once the hurricane conditions pass the area. Roger?
Thank you, Ben. I think it's, I don't know how much Wi-Fi is available in Lee County right now, but we're hopeful that, you know, there will be a lot of people who get to see this, this Facebook production, and hopefully those of you in the media will be able to spread the word as well to help us communicate with the community. This is going to be a very difficult, trying time for the next several months. This response and recovery effort is going to be complex, it's going to be costly, and it's going to be require very concentrated efforts on the parts of the federal, state, and local government agencies and the private sector as well. So with that, Commissioner, did you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I just think most importantly, thank you, Roger. Most importantly, let everyone know that we're here. Certainly as someone that's governed on these Barrier Islands for a long time, my hearts go out to those people. We'll try to help them as soon as we can. When I was on TV just a little while ago, just want to emphasize, we understand there are people waiting for us, but we can't put anyone else in harm's way, and we have to wait for the conditions to improve. We have resources, and the governor assured us we'll continue to have resources, whatever we need. So we want to make sure we have those deployed when it's safe for all people. Thank you.
We'll take a few questions.
Roger, we are hearing about multiple fatalities. Do you have any estimation on how many deaths could have occurred from this?
We do not have an estimate yet. And if you have information that you could pass along to us, we would appreciate having it so that we can follow up when we're able to get out.
Are we anticipating that? You know, we're hearing the hospitals are preparing for it.
As part of the emergency response plans, hospitals will always prepare for that when we have a hurricane. I think it's reasonable to think that, given all of the conditions that we've experienced for the last 12 hours or so, that there can be fatalities, but we just don't have that information yet.
To what extent was it worse than what you might have thought it would be leading up to these 2 days?
For all of us who've lived in Florida for a lot of years, we've been through many, many hurricanes locally. And it seems as though every storm that we've endured, we hear about tidal surge and we hear about flooding, but it hasn't been our time. We have not experienced the kind of flooding and tidal surge that we have experienced today. You see about that in other parts of the country, and you wonder whether or not it's going to be our turn. Well, it appears as though this would be our time to endure that.
There have been some infrastructure damage that you referenced. Is this kind of permanent damage that will require rebuilding roads or rebuilding bridges or things of that nature? Has it gotten that far?
Well, we don't know the answer to that question yet, Bill. We don't know to what extent infrastructure has been damaged. I think it's reasonable, given the winds, and the tidal surge that we are going to see down power lines, we're going to see down power poles, we're probably going to see down communication towers. I think just about the only communication system left in Lee County that's intact is cell phones, which, you know, for some reason. So, you know, we think that's going to be okay. But given the conditions that we've been living with, I think I don't want to rule out devastating damage to any of the infrastructure yet. We just don't know.
Some people are asking where can they go because their homes are destroyed or, you know, they're flooded. Is there any place people can go? What would you tell people who are sitting in their cars right now?
What I would tell them now is when it's safe to drive, go to one of our emergency shelters. We have 14 shelters that are open. Last count, we had almost 4,000 people in those shelters, and we can house 40,000. Once the roads are clear and we have a better understanding of the kind of damage we have, people will likely find themselves going outside of Lee County to find at least temporary housing. We'll also probably be having conversations with the federal government about temporary housing for victims of the storm.
Is there any chance we may be opening Hertz Arena or anything along those lines?
Hertz Arena is, Hertz Arena is open. It is. We've had contract with them for many, many years, and so that shelter is available.
Could you provide more details about Cape Coral? What have you been hearing back from the city government?
So I've been in constant communication with the mayor, certainly having issues there, but they seem to have sustained this better than other communities. There's some breach in some of the water lines. They're going through that capacity. Certainly had different roofs come off, but by and large, in the conversations I've had with the mayor so far, they seem to have done a little bit better than the rest of the community.
Transportation right now, people not supposed to go riding in their private vehicles, or where does that stand?
People should not be on the road. It is just too dangerous. We still have high velocity winds. We still have flooding. We still have tidal surge. And it is, 5:45? It'll be dark in a couple of hours. And the last place people need to be is on the road. It is just too dangerous.
This is indefinitely at this point, the curfew for Lee County?
Yes, sir. The curfew will be in effect at 6 and tonight and until further notice. We don't want to keep it in place any longer than necessary, but given that right in the middle of the storm, we had some bad guys break into a business and ransack it. And I want to reiterate, and I am very comfortable speaking for the law enforcement community, there will be zero tolerance for violence of any kind in this county. People will not be allowed to take advantage of this situation.
Commissioner, how bad is the damage on the barrier island from what you can
I've gotten multiple reports of some hotels that are gone, houses that people are in their attics with water that high. I'm going to suspect, what we thought 16-foot surges took place. And when you look at the coordination of the way the tides come in and that surge coming, I can't even fathom it. But the number of people have called for help. We're on the barrier islands. We're aware of that. But I can't put more people in harm's way to try to go save them. We have resources. There's over 70 helicopters right in Miami. We have the ability to go help them. But we've got to wait.
Do we have any idea when some of these people might be able to get some help?
I don't think we're going to see anything that we're going to be able to do till tomorrow morning, because we're not going to be out of sustained tropical winds till tomorrow morning. So unfortunately, as much as my heart breaks governing on that island for as long as it is, we can't even get a helicopter up. It's only going to do is come down. So I can't put our first responders, our military people in harm's way. As much as we understand the severity of the situation, we just can't do that. And my empathy and sympathy and prayers for the people out there. But this is something we asked very early and very often. Make sure you get off a barrier island. So my heart goes out to them. Be patient. We'll do the best we can. But we can't put our first responders in harm's way. Can't.
So we would ask you to please help us convey this message to your listening audiences. That would be enormously helpful, and we'll be in touch about our next briefing probably tomorrow morning sometime.
And you're spending the night?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all.
That was the Lee County EOC giving a briefing on the Lee County response, and there was some breaking news in there, but also a general statement and sense coming from Roger Desjardins, the Lee County manager. I'm going to quote him. "We are beginning to get a sense that our community has been decimated. This is going to be a very difficult and trying time for the next several months." He also had some breaking news about a curfew.
That's right. They talked about some looting. A very unfortunate thing to hear about happening on Cleveland when first responders weren't able to get out, some people taking advantage of that situation. Again, this storm isn't over. As they mentioned toward the end there, it is still unsafe to be out. We want to make sure everyone understands that, especially communities up to our north Charlotte County area. But there is a curfew in place for all of Lee County. Not quite a Estero yet, but every other city within Lee County is under that same curfew. They're just waiting to get with the leaders in Estero to confirm that everyone is on the same page with that. But that curfew, believe, will be in place at
Starts at 6.
Starts at 6.
So
and
starts within 10 minutes or so for Lee County, all of Lee County except for Estero. And you would assume Estero will join once they can make contact with them. And one of the reasons that that started was Lee County confirmed that there was looting that happened in the city of Fort Myers. Fort Myers said to Lee County leaders, can we put a curfew in place? We got to put a stop to this. And that is what has transpired as some people have made the decision during a tragedy, a tumultuous one for our community, that that's something they chose to do. Looting was reported at a gas station on Cleveland Avenue. And here we are now, a curfew at 6 o'clock in Lee County.
And they did say law enforcement will be enforcing that. There will be exceptions for healthcare needs, work, school, or going to the store. But again, if you don't have to be out right now, it is still not safe to be out in our communities. Also curfews in effect in Punta Gorda, actually all of Charlotte County, and Naples as well. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to be out on those streets anyway, but not worth taking any chances right now.
Here at the Anchor Desk, we are continuing to follow breaking news and try to keep you up to date on all of the things that are happening across Southwest Florida. Real quick, some breaking news from Collier County schools. They have added Friday that they're going to be off schools in Collier County. We'll continue to update you on what's happening with our school districts, but Collier County has made the decision, no school the rest of the week. I'm going to send it over to our chief meteorologist. That's John Patrick from ABC7. JP.
And I'm here with meteorologist Jason Dunning from NBC2. And the one thing with this 5 o'clock advisory that I don't like is the forward speed slowing down from 9 to 8 miles an hour. It doesn't seem like much, but when you're trying to get a persistent, already slow-moving storm out of the area, that's not good news. We want it to speed up, not slow down.
Yeah, we want to get this out of here, and especially as it relates to the storm surge threat. The longer it sticks around, the worse the storm surge is going to be. And I just want to reiterate, for those of you who see that the storm now, if you look at the eye and it has passed to the north of you, the threat is by far not over, because we still have the backside, the south side of the eye, and water will continue to get piled up into the coast of Lee County, up the Caloosahatchee River. We already have reports of some storm surge along the Caloosahatchee. We're still concerned over parts of Cape Coral. So unfortunately for sections of Lee County, there's still a lot more storm surge to come as long as our winds continue to push on shore.
And they're telling me our microphones are competing with each other, so we have to separate. But if you want to go and get ready over at NBC, I'll throw it back over to you in a moment. I'll go over the 5 o'clock advisory here, and we'll do a little radar tracking here. Apparently, while our coverage can mix, our studio microphones can't. So I'm over here in ABC. Jason's going to go back over on the other side of this very monitor over in NBC, and he'll be back with you here in just a second. But as we were talking about here, the thing that's not good about this 5 o'clock advisory is the forward progression of the storm. It's north-northeasterly right now at 8 miles an hour. It's slower. It's down from 9 miles an hour. It's also a little bit weaker. That's the good part of this. It's starting to weaken now that it's onshore. It's not weakening very quickly right now. We've gone from 150 down to, or I should say we've gone from 155 down to 150. Now we're down to 140. Still a very powerful hurricane that we're dealing with here, a Category 4. They were talking about power outages at the press conference. I wanted to show this real quick as well. This is the up-to-the-minute power outage data that we get from our weather vendor, and they ingest it here into our weather system. And this is real time, taking into account all of the various power companies that we use here in Southwest Florida. And you see Lee County, our most populated county, I think it was 75% of LCEC customers are without power right now. And you know, that 400,000 number is certainly a believable number with that little piece of information. 170,000 without power in Collier County, 120 in Charlotte County, and then you get inland, not as populated. One of the reasons why we don't see as many numbers there, but also the winds, especially here in Glades and Hendry County, were not nearly as bad as in western Charlotte and Collier and in Lee County. So that's why we see some lower numbers there. But a devastating storm nonetheless. And right now on our ABC7 and NBC2 live radar, boy, this thing is still trying to pop up some lightning strikes here. This just will not give up. So when we see lightning around the eyewall of a hurricane, that's a sign that it is trying to strengthen. We've got some very vigorous upward motion within that eyewall, and that generates the very heavy rain and the very heavy wind that we are seeing. And the last time I spoke to you a little bit ago, almost a half an hour or so ago, we were saying that this western eyewall right in here that's tracking right now through Arcadia on the northern side of that, you're getting pounded right now. Northport is still getting those heavy rains and winds, hurricane force strength. I mean, these are going to be 100, 110 mile an hour winds. Starting to get a little bit better in Englewood and Venice, but you're still in that western section of the eyewall. And as this hurricane moves like this off to the north-northeast, this eyewall is also going to move off to the north-northeast, and it moves off in that direction. We still have all this to drag through, so you're not going to get a break like the people in the eye have gotten. And by the way, if you're in the eye of the hurricane right now, which is confined to southern DeSoto and northern Charlotte County, if you're in this eye, do not go outside. I know occasionally we show pictures and video. There are ring cameras, and we've got traffic cameras and things like that that we can get video from. So don't go outside and put yourself in danger, because if you're in the eye of that storm, you have half a hurricane to go. So Northport, Punta Gorda, you're kind of on the very edge of that, and then on into Englewood as well. That's what we're looking at as far as the worst weather right now. If Jason is ready, I'm going to toss it over him in NBC2 and do a little more tracking on this hurricane.
Yeah, JP, if you can do me a favor, I just realized that my clicker was left in your studio. Oh. So if you can deliver that over to me so I can take a closer look at. Thank you very much. And hello to you. There we go. Appreciate it.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Okay. So you heard JP going over the power outages here, and as we take a closer look at Hurricane Ian, you heard JP also say that winds have lowered a little bit, but we're still talking about a major hurricane, still a Category 4 storm. I've been looking at some reports from the National Weather Service over parts of the southeastern Cape Coral in particular. They recorded a wind gusts up to 145 miles per hour. So those winds definitely being verified, being reported by the National Hurricane Center as this continues to slowly, and unfortunately ever so slowly, crawling up to the northeast. Eventually, yes, it's going to get out of here. It has been a long day here for all of us, but this will continue to push up to the northeast. The problem here is, even though the eye will continue to move out of our area, it's about the onshore wind coming in back behind it. So we are by far not done with the threat of storm surge. I wish I had better news for you. We've seen some of the heartbreaking video and images from Fort Myers Beach and Sanibel, Naples, from some of that Gulf water getting pushed up against the coastline, sort of a worst case scenario here for Southwest Florida. But just to kind of illustrate that, so JP was showing you where the current center of circulation is, and you can see the little abscess of rain right here where the eye is circulating. But, you know, think about how hurricanes rotate counterclockwise. So the winds are coming in about like this. And down across the coastline of Collier County, the winds are still coming in onshore, and we still have some hurricane force wind gusts along the coast of Collier County from Naples down to Marco Island. That onshore wind, even though the winds will not be as strong, will continue to pile water up along the coast. And what's more than that is it's not going to let the water that's already pushed inland recede back out into the Gulf of Mexico until this moves far enough north. And right now it looks like that might not be until late tomorrow. So this is kind of the situation we're dealing with right now. JP was tracking some of this really heavy, intense rain that he's described as pounding areas around Port Charlotte, up through Deep Creek and Arcadia. That's that northwestern Eyewall, and this has been throughout the entire process of the storm, packing the highest winds. Now, since it is over the land, the moisture source, the fuel source, has been cut off from Hurricane Ian, but it's going to be a slow process. And also, as it continues to weaken, the wind field will also continue to spread out. So this will kind of uncoil as it moves across the state of Florida. I want to take a closer look at some of the wind speeds we're looking at right now. So I'm going to switch over to velocity mode. And so it's not going to be your traditional radar view, but we're going to zoom in just a little bit here. And let me get out of the zoom. I just want to give you an idea of what kind of wind speeds we're still looking at. And we'll look in particular up through the Nocatee area around Fort Ogden. Yeah, I mean, you can see those winds up to 107 miles per hour. Now, the radar beam is hitting that up a little bit higher in the atmosphere. So this is not what we're going to observe down at the surface, but I would venture to guess here that we're going to see those winds close to 80 to 90 miles per hour in that part of DeSoto County. Let me take you a little bit farther here to the west. For those of you in Port Charlotte, I'm sure it's a very scary situation. Maybe you're listening to us on our radio stations. We have a partnership with the Beasley Media Group too, so we're also on the radio. So I'm going to try to be as descriptive as possible, so you can kind of get the message across and know when that storm threat is going to come to an end. But for those of you around Northport and El Jobin, we're looking at those winds now close to 100 to 130 miles per hour. So this is by far the worst part right now still with Hurricane Ian on this northwestern side. And unfortunately, it's going to take some time before it starts to move out. Let me see if I can give you an estimate here. Let me zoom out just a little bit, and we're going to go to the back edge of some of those stronger hurricane force winds. And I'll use my tracker here. So usually we track and we tell you when things are going to start to arrive. So let me give you a better idea of when conditions will start to improve for you. Now, unfortunately, what we've seen here is that there's been a slowing motion. So this storm is moving at about 8 to 9 miles per hour right now. So Bokeelia, that would be around 6:07 this evening. And I'm going to walk over to the weather computer real quick because I've got to make some adjustments here to the timeline to give you a better idea. So I'm going to try to stretch this out. So just bear with me. Just a moment here. I'm going to get into my little toolbar, and I'm going to extend the duration. Let's go a little bit longer out. Okay, so places like Burnt Store Marina, Pirate Harbor, Placida, Rotunda, Manasota Key, Inglewood, as we get closer to the 7 o'clock hour. So that will give us about, let's say, another hour and a half to 2 hours. You're going to start to see those really intense extreme winds subside. Now, it's still going to be windy outside. There's some tropical storm force winds back behind that, but I just want to give you an idea of when conditions will start to improve. Let me add some more cities on there. There we go. So Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, South Venice, Northport, Deep Creek. I think after 8 o'clock, those hurricane force winds will start to lessen. So you're going to see those winds drop. And they're still going to be fierce, but we're not going to have those. I'm sorry, Keith, can you repeat that? Okay. All right, so I'm here in the NBC2 First Alert Hurricane Center. I have to come over here to make some of these adjustments to give you a better timeline. But let me take one more step here, and we'll add some more communities across Charlotte County, and then we'll do DeSoto County too, because I know for those of you in Arcadia, you're getting hit hard by some of these hurricane force winds. So again, Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, and Northport, right around 8 to 8:30. Those winds will start to subside as Hurricane Ian slowly moves outside of our viewing area. And it's going to be a process as we head through tonight again, but that is just the wind threat, not the surge threat. Unfortunately, once the wind threat passes, for those of you in Charlotte County, we are going to see a high water level rise in Charlotte Harbor and up the Peace River. And right now, the latest estimates are for about as much as 10 to 18 feet of water level rises above ground level. It's a scary situation, I know, and if you're still there in Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte, anywhere there around Charlotte Harbor, if you've been watching some of the coverage so far throughout the course of the day, it's been quite honestly horrific. Some of the scenes we've witnessed at Fort Myers Beach and Sanibel, which is pretty much covered in water. I want to switch back over to our radar source here, and I told you I was going to take a closer look at Arcadia. So let me draw another track on here, and I'll give you a better idea of when some of these hurricane force winds, at least the worst of the winds, I should say, will start to exit your location. All right, let me take this out a little bit farther. We'll take this out to, yeah, all right, so I'm trying to get Arcadia on there. And I think it's going to be a little bit later into the night here, so we're thinking, there's Arcadia, about 10:12 this evening. So not until about 9 to 10 o'clock, unfortunately, when those of you in Arcadia will start to see those winds calming down. Let's talk about some of the rainfall that we've seen over Charlotte County in particular. We've seen a huge swath of rainfall, and for those of you watching in Lee County, we have not, of course, forgotten about you, but you know, we've got an extensive viewing area here in Southwest Florida, so we want to make sure that we are giving everyone the information that they need. And you can see that eye very well defined here from at least the western extent of that eye from Port Charlotte up through Arcadia, and you can see those really intense rain bands. So along with the storm surge threat, we're concerned with the flash flooding threat, that freshwater flooding from some of that rainfall. So let's switch over, and we can actually estimate with the NBC2 First Alert Live Doppler radar how much rainfall we've seen there. And over northern parts of Charlotte County, Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, out along the Cape Hayes Peninsula, through Arcadia, those rainfall amounts, those are some blockbuster rainfall totals, around 8 to 15 inches. So on top of that, we also have the threat of storm surge, but that threat of storm surge, for those of you farther north, will not arrive until a little bit later. And I explained this a moment ago, but I just want to give you a better idea. So I'll zoom out and give you that illustration. So, you know, think of that hurricane. The winds are coming in counterclockwise around the storm. So we're just now probably going to start to see those winds push the water onshore. We're going to get those winds coming in from the Gulf of Mexico at about 130, 140 miles per hour. And it's kind of like, you know, think of it as a bulldozer, and it just kind of pushes that water up against the coastline. And unfortunately, it doesn't have anywhere to go. Southwest Florida essentially is a wetland, so it's going to push that water up the Peace River, up the Myakka River, and we're going to see very similar water rises compared to what we're looking at in Cape Coral and Fort Myers right now. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is, as we continue to track this, okay, I'm going to send it back over to the desk, and we'll continue to track it here in the Weather Center.
All right, Jason, thank you very much. It's Megan Miller and Jeff Butera here at the anchor desk. As you're watching the simulcast on ABC7 and NBC2, as well as perhaps listening to it, we wanted to give you some perspective on what is happening outside, and we feel at this point that it's safe to do that from here at our studio. You may have noticed we do not have our reporters spread out across Southwest Florida, bouncing around in the rain, dodging things flying through the air. We made a determination that we were going to keep our people safe, and that was very important to us. At this point, we feel comfortable taking it outside to our reporter, Kyla Gaylor. Kyla.
Hey, Jeff and Megan. Yeah, I wanted to say that, first of all, I do feel safe where I'm standing. Right now, I'm in the garage next to our studios. The area works to protect me from the wind. So you may hear all of that wind, but you can see, you know, my hair is not flying around. I'm not feeling too much of it. And like Jeff mentioned, we didn't send crews out. This was the first time in several hours where we felt it was safe enough to just step outside the building. And that commitment to safety has helped us deliver this continuous coverage while no other stations are on air right now. So I do want to show you what's happening. You can hear those wind gusts whipping up behind me. I actually want you to listen for a second so you can hear how strong they are. It is just howling. Now I want you to also check out the parking lot behind me, because if many of you were watching earlier, you remember this parking lot didn't look like this. We didn't have any of these trees down, but now all of these branches cover the road and the area where we usually park our cars. And you can see the trees that are still standing look a little bit more bare. But truthfully, when I look out at our parking lot, I feel lucky because a lot of families right now are dealing with so much worse than just downed trees. They are underwater. We're talking about Fort Myers Beach, Naples, and now more communities to our north. So I really am just thinking about all of those families, many of whom might not even be able to be watching right now because they are struggling to stay afloat. Many people don't have power right now. So thankfully, we are dealing with downed trees here, and we're all okay because Southwest Florida is certainly struggling right now. But I will say the winds have started to die down, which, you know, makes us feel a little bit better that maybe we are getting through the thick of this storm. But we, of course, know that storm surge is going to be the next big threat throughout the rest of this night. Jeff, Megan?
And Kyla, if you can still hear us, just a quick question. I saw one car go past behind you. We are in that period where Lee County has issued a curfew, so they're reminding you, and our meteorologists have been reminding you, it is still not safe to be out and about if you don't absolutely need to be. Are you seeing a lot of people, a lot of drivers out behind you right now?
I haven't noticed too many, Megan. Truthfully, I've been looking a little bit more this way, but I have noticed, you know, maybe one or two, the one that you mentioned, and it's really not safe to be out right now. Despite the curfew, you can hear those winds. I am a little bit protected because I'm in this little bit of a fortress here, but, you know, I can still feel those wind gusts, and I would not want to be driving right now. Everyone needs to stay home. That's why the curfew is in place right now. It is for everybody's safety, especially because once first responders feel like it is safe for them to go out, they need to be the first ones on the road. So everybody really adhere to that curfew. It's for your safety and it's for first responders' safety eventually once they can get back out there and answer some calls. Jeff and Megan?
All right, Kyla, thank you very much. I want to add two things. Kyla talked about how it is not safe to be outside. And we recognize the hypocrisy of some people in our news industry who will say it is not safe to be outside while they are outside. Kyla is inside of a garage right now. She talked about the fortress. It is the garage where we keep all of our vehicles. She is protected and she is not out in the wind exposing herself to the possibility of anything flying. The second thing that I wanted to add was just context about where we are so you can get a sense of what's happening in the area and where it compares to where you are. Our station is on Central Avenue in Fort Myers. The best comparison is to say that we are within probably a mile, maybe a half mile from the Edison Mall and 41 in Fort Myers. So that's what's happening in Fort Myers at this point, and we hope wherever you are that you are safe as well. We've got some video to show you right now.
That is right. So this is out on Chiquita Boulevard. For those of you who are not watching, if you're listening, the wind is blowing through this Cape Coral neighborhood. Eventually, the wind tears off a roof. One of our NBC2 and ABC7 viewers posted this video to our Facebook page. Again, viewer says this is along Chiquita Parkway.
Our next piece of video, you can see what is happening here. This is in Cape Coral, Southwest Florida's largest city. Pool screens blowing in the wind. A number of rectangular pool screens, sections in this particular pool just blowing. This video coming in from Bob and Dawn Murray in Cape Coral as they will have some work to do to restore their pool. All right, so one of the areas that we've been watching throughout the afternoon is Fort Myers Beach. Storm surge has covered most of Fort Myers Beach. Town leaders have been telling us the island's backup water pumps have failed due to storm surge and power outages, and emergency response is on hold. One of the things that was stressed by the Lee County emergency managers during their news conference that we took you to about 45 minutes ago. That's a problem for those people that chose to stay on Fort Myers Beach, including a couple that I talked to this afternoon who live on Coconut Drive. They've lived there for about 7 years. They swam to the second floor of their neighbor's house when their house fell into the water.
The house that I lived in is pretty much just gone. Matter of fact, I am looking at the roof out the bedroom window.
That's not all Ken Fritchie told me he's seeing outside on the streets of Fort Myers Beach. Refrigerators, cars, water heaters, and yes, even homes floating down the street.
There's been stuff coming down the street like Houses, oh my Lord. Oh, it's look, the whole back of her house is out. Oh my God.
And they're stuck right now in their place?
Yeah.
In fact, they're now next door. Their house is in the water. They went in the water to get to their neighbors.
We swam across, and I got pretty banged up, so did my wife. I mean, real banged up. And we come through, Remain opened up a side 2-story window that we climbed in. I went under a couple times, and I thought it was not going to be good.
Nails and wood scraped their bodies as they swam. They made it, getting through a 2nd-story window. They're now about 10 to 12 feet up, but the water's rising. I asked if there was anything that we could do.
There's no way that you can get in here. I mean, the wind's blowing hard. You can't hardly see. You know, it was our choice. We stayed, but we didn't think it'd be this bad.
I've been thinking about them for the last couple hours. We do have a producer that reached out to emergency response, trying to let them know about emergencies that we've been hearing about, and we gave them the address for where this couple is, as well as their neighbors. The water was about a foot below the window line when I talked to Ken. He promised he was going to keep me updated. I'm hoping to get an update from him that he's doing okay.
And we want to show you town and river, this area in Fort Myers, right along the river. I've talked to some folks that are out there who had to swim to a neighbor's house because the water was rising so high in their home. So it gives me chills thinking about all of this. And as we heard from the gentleman you talked to, Jeff, a lot of times you just don't think this is going to happen to you. I know even I'm starting to think of things I need to start doing before the next one comes. And you just can't help but feel for those people because, you know, we've seen a lot of storms in our area. They all do different things, and this one really did the worst case scenario that we were fearing and starting to predict as things got closer.
I try to pay particular attention to our chief meteorologist, John Patrick, as well as NBC2 chief meteorologist, Allison Ray, and listen very closely to what they say in the lead up to the storm. One of the common themes when you talk to JP and you talk to Allison was the uncertainty with this storm and that we did not have a great sense of where it could go. In particular, I remember JP talking a couple days ago about the European model and saying, well, the European model has the storm coming directly over Southwest Florida. At this point, it is an outlier model because most of the models were going to take it north of us. However, he said, think back to Hurricane Irma, 2017. The Euro model was very correct, and it had it going across Southwest Florida and was a bit of an outlier in those models.
Here he comes.
It was actually our in-house model that did that.
It was our in-house model.
Our in-house model did that. And if you remember, like during Hurricane Irma, it was an outlier, and we kind of
come on in, JP.
Okay, I'll have a seat. We kind of discounted it at that time because it was so different from all the other forecast models, right. You know, the European and the GFS and even some of the high-resolution, more localized forecast models, you know, that model brought it right over Southwest Florida. Most of the other models were doing what this one actually is doing, and it's kept it offshore by a couple of miles. But with Irma, as we all know, that came onshore, and, you know, that really solidified my trust in that model. And for this storm, that model, our in-house model, was doing the same thing. It was bringing it right on top of us. You know, it was pinpointing Sarasota, Charlotte County right on the line for, you know, the first time it does it, you're thinking, okay, this is a fluke. You know, we'll wait and see what the next one does. But then it was probably at least a half a dozen model runs that it brought it, you know, it would shift a mile north or south either way. But when you're talking about a model that covers the entire continent, that's nothing. I mean, it was really just focused on us, you know, and pretty much exactly, you know, the storm, you know, if we're going to be honest, the storm probably made landfall about 3 miles or so, 3 air miles or so south of where our forecast model had it. But I mean, it did not go up the Gulf of Mexico like a lot of them initially had.
And that's why I think it's so important to think about every scenario. throughout, thinking back to days leading up to this, a lot of people were very focused on that cone. And I mean, obviously you have to focus on the cone in a sense, but as you've said, for days, anything can happen. And we just saw that come to life today and devastate multiple communities, and it's not done yet. If you're just joining us, as you said, if this is a football game, we're a little past halftime.
Yeah. The Eye, is that a current satellite? No, that's not a current satellite. That's a little bit. But the Eye is onshore now. It's I think the actual center of the Eye, Allison is fast forwarding it here. It looks to be like it's in northern Charlotte, southern DeSoto County right now, and it is starting to fall apart. So we're going to see the numbers go down with the advisories. I think it's down to 1:30 with the 6 o'clock advisory. Is that right?
I have 5 p.m. numbers here. I have 1:40 as of 5 p.m. What time?
I think meteorologist Sammy Squires told me it was down to 1:30 at the 6 o'clock advisory, and we get those hourly now, and we have been for several hours now, getting those hourly advisories. So that actually helps us track the storm as well. We can actually see it starting to weaken as it progresses inland, but 1:30, that's still a very strong hurricane that's over us right now.
Appreciate the clarification from our chief meteorologist, John Patrick. I got the model wrong, but the tenor was correct.
You got the story right. It was, the player of the story was.
Yeah, but I think it's important to note that they're not outliers just to be different. They are outliers because that's where their data is showing them this storm is going, and it has proven to be fairly accurate.
And I'm gonna give credit to our weather vendor. We use Barron Weather Services here at ABC7 and NBC2, and they have a history. They actually updated the forecast model that we use now. It's actually updated, and I think Hurricane Irma was the first hurricane that it used. They updated it about 5 years ago. They made the algorithms a bit better. And even more accurate than it was before. And that's another reason why when we saw the Irma thing, we're like, oh, they just updated this model. It's, it's doing crazy stuff. But now that we've 2 hurricanes now that model has tracked and has nailed it days in advance, that's a model that personally I trust the most out of all of them.
Hey, JP,
yeah?
we want to kind of meteorology talk about that for a little bit, because Jason was talking yesterday about the Barron's model and hindcasting the Charlie storm.
Yeah, they went back and actually put some of the data for Hurricane Charlie in the model that we use, and that particular model brought Charlie into Charlotte Harbor.
Just as it did.
Just as it happened, and then.
Come on in.
All right.
Well, join the club here. Let's move over, and of course we saw. We saw that trend over the last couple days with the storm. That was a possibility for this to come in over Lee and Charlotte County. It was scary for us to see.
And one thing one thing I want to point out is, we weren't exactly sure where it was going to make landfall, but I felt like we were really trying to stress the importance that there were going to be impacts outside of that cone. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Naples was never in the cone, and that's not where it made landfall, but we're seeing that devastation of the storm surge. And now, like we were mentioning before, the rain will calm down. The winds are still howling out there.
Yeah, we just heard
And the storm surge is still increasing. And now going up the Caloosahatchee, where we're seeing those winds turn onshore.
I was just talking to somebody who's in one of the high-rises in downtown Fort Myers, and he is now seeing the water from the Caloosahatchee spill over into downtown Fort Myers. We're getting reports of the downtown area also being flooded. You can see there's the NBC2 and ABC7 First Alert live Doppler radar. A little mix of the branding there.
All right, sure.
Yeah, so for those of you watching at home, and if you're in Lee County, you probably noticed the winds are starting to relax a little bit, and while that is true, we still have a very serious storm surge threat, because the first phase was the wind, and now that we're on the backside of the storm, now it's the storm surge, and that is the most deadly aspect of a hurricane.
Our station manager, Daryl, was in here a few hours ago, and we were in between hits over there in the ABC7 studio, and he actually put the idea in my head of tracking when we're going to start to see all of this come to an end. And I said, oh, yeah, I can do that on TV. He goes, do it for me personally. Just let me see when this is going to end. And we tracked it in, and it looks like we'll really start to see things in the Fort Myers area as far as the real nasty wind gusts, probably about another hour or so as this continues to lift north.
Let me track the back edge of this here, and we'll put this into motion. It's moving to the north now, about just under 10 miles per hour as of the latest advisory. We'll have to make some adjustments here, so just bear with me for just a moment.
Mine does that too, so don't worry.
You know, I wish we can just get this thing out of here. Unfortunately, it's slowing down a little bit, but just to give you an estimate for those of you, Lover's Key, Sanibel, you know, parts of the Lee County Islands that have just been devastated. Yeah, so another hour or so. So, you know, hang in there. Conditions will start to improve for the wind aspect of the storm. But on the backside, those winds, unfortunately, even into the day tomorrow, will continue to come on shore. So the water's not really going to have a good opportunity to recede and go back into the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, I have neighbors. I live up. You said you were up in Lehigh. I live up in North Fort Myers, and they are telling me sporadically because it's hard to get service right now, hard to reach out to people, that the water's still rising up there, and that's when you're up farther up the Caloosahatchee. That water just kind of keeps on going and keeps on going, and it's going to fall into those canals, into those tributaries, and move into those homes.
While we're talking, I'm just going to keep adding different times in there for different communities. Now, again, this is when you can expect the winds to start to subside. We're still going to have tropical storm force winds back behind it, but at least the worst of the winds will be over. These are the estimated times for your neighborhoods.
Right. So.
Why don't we actually run down the list for people listening on radio here?
Okay.
We are actually. I've been told we're no longer.
Oh, we're no longer.
Yeah, I don't know that we're actually broadcasting on radio.
Oh wow. So.
Is that true?
We're not sure.
We're not sure.
They are still on the airspace.
Well, okay, we'll still be as descriptive as possible. We'll read off times, yeah. Because I know a lot of you might be away from your TV in a room and you have maybe the volume turned up. So we'll go through here. Sanibel, 7:16, San Carlos Park, 7:36. Again, these are times we expect to see the winds start to come down. Those hurricane force winds will start to push to your north. Iona, 8 o'clock. So that's the Iona-McGregor area. North Captiva, 8:32. Cape Coral, 8:42. Fort Myers, around 9 o'clock. North Fort Myers, around 9:39.
So around Cape Coral, we still have about 2 hours of this to go before this lifts north.
It is still rumbling, and I am not shocked, but shocked how strong the storm still is on the back edge of this. I mean, it still sounds like the start of the storm out here at our studio, and we're still getting those strong winds coming through.
Can we take our Meadow computer, because we actually have a live shot right now that's still up. One of the few shots that are actually still operational. Yep. So we're looking there. This is from one of the canals in Cape Coral. It goes from along Del Prado down through Cape Coral Parkway. It's the Rubicon Canal and the Raven Canal. And you can see what we're looking at here is the water is definitely rising. Thankfully, we're not seeing it getting pushed up over the land, but again, the storm surge threat has not ended for those of us in Cape Coral. So this is an image we're going to continue to monitor throughout the course of the evening. Of course, we only have a couple more hours left of daylight.
Right, and that's going to be really dangerous. We only have a few more hours of daylight. The water is still rising. The threat is not over. This could be pretty dangerous, even more so than it already is into the overnight hours. We don't even know the span of how devastating it is. We're only getting pieces of information. So by tomorrow at sunlight, when we have maybe a chance to get around town and see what's going on, I think it's going to be so much worse than we even can imagine now.
Because the worst of the storm is not even, you know, through us yet as far as the storm surge event. We still have Charlotte County, which is going to be starting here after the center gets far enough north. And the Lee County, you know, up the Caloosahatchee, we're just now starting to see some of that water come over the edge. And I just checked our cameras. We have our weather network of cameras. The only one that I can get to pull up is Kalia Bay, unfortunately. You know, all the hurricane has knocked out. We had the Edison Grand and the River District and Pinchers, and all those cameras have been knocked out by the hurricane. So unfortunately, we don't have any of those resources available right now. But we do have some images coming into our newsroom of some flooding that's occurring downtown.
Yeah, trying to give you an idea of what they just at least give an estimate on the wind speeds here for portions of Lee County on the backside of the storm. Now, this is the radar beam is about 5,000 feet up in the air, so this is going to be an overestimate, right?
Right, pretty high.
But we can kind of have a general idea here. This says 43 miles per hour. I would think it'd be, you know, closer to 20 to 30 miles per hour right now with some higher gusts. That we have some range folding issues there. So let me click on another spot here, and you know, around 50 miles per hour. Ponta Rasa also around 50. We're getting a lot more accurate readings though over Charlotte County just because it's closer to the radar site. So the radar beam is a little bit lower, and so we'll look there around Murdoch and click on that again.
Wow.
Now, those are still some really impressive wind speeds.
That's about 30. That's about 35, 36, 3,700 feet high. So at ground level, they'll be a little bit less, but I mean, still, you know, probably 110.
Still, we're at least hurricane force.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, so we're still at least hurricane force, and we still have to kind of go through all of those images that people have been sending us. And the best way to communicate right now with all the cell towers down is going to be, if you have data, using social media sources has been my best way to communicate. Somehow Facebook messaging, Instagram messaging, Twitter messaging, that's going to be the best way we can do it now.
If we can take our tower cam real quick, I'm just, our station here is in central Fort Myers, and I just want to kind of get a sense of what we're looking at in central Fort Myers. And we are near Central Avenue and Winkler, near Victory Lane Chevrolet, not too far from the Edison Mall. And I know the camera's shaking a little bit, so I'll do the best I can to try to maneuver this, but it looks like we do have a lot of standing water out there. And let me tilt this around and try to get a better idea of where we're looking. And I tell you what, it's really hard to see out there with some of the rain. It looks like maybe we're looking south there. And is that okay? Let me keep tilting around. We're gonna, or pan back around here. We'll look over in the general direction of downtown Fort Myers.
It looks like you're going a little bit northwest of our. That looks like Central Avenue right there.
You know what? The camera is
doing its own
when
thing.
I try to move it, the camera is getting blown around here. So let's
I'm just upset that camera's
just
still
for a moment. I'm amazed that the camera is on top of our radar tower here at Waterman Broadcast.
We had a wind gust of what, 109 miles per hour here at the station.
I told Lou I would give him a shout out for getting that, because our sensor on top of the building, the data connection between the roof and down here has gone out, but he was able to manually get in there and find that here at Waterman Broadcasting we had a 109-mile-an-hour gust. So thank you, Lou Van Vlyman in the IT department, for getting that for us.
Our engineers have been very hard at work today, keeping us on air.
This afternoon,
we have to give a nice thank you to them for sure for letting us keep giving you this information throughout the evening and staying on air. It's not easy to stay on air and easy in situations like this. You have wind gusts, you have issues that are just trying to knock you off, and so thankfully we're able to stay on it and give you that information.
So we're looking at the Edison Mall right now. So we're looking down to the south and west in the general direction of Cleveland Avenue, just to kind of give you an idea. So as we pan the camera around, now that I have a better idea of where we're looking, because it's honestly kind of hard to make out a whole lot here, but we'll zoom around here. Now we're kind of looking in the general direction of downtown Fort Myers. I tell you what, the wind is really getting a hold of this camera. It keeps pushing it down. Okay, so there I've found one of the high rises in downtown Fort Myers, but we just can't see a whole lot there. You see the winds are still pretty strong.
I think Jeff has some new information for us. Jeff.
Thank you very much. We just have a couple of quick breaking news items that we wanted to pass along. First of all, Lee Health has announced that they are evacuating the first floor of Health Park, one of the Lee County hospitals. Just to give you a sense of what's happening with the water, this is still causing problems across Southwest Florida, including in Lee County. Health Park first floor has been evacuated.
And again, that's the reason why there is that curfew in place across Lee County, in some of our other areas, Charlotte County, Naples, Marco Island. There is still a threat weather-wise. And so again, it's not safe to be outside. Another breaking update for you. Lee County schools have announced they will also be closed through Friday. So just extending that one more day. They were already going to be closed. Gosh, what day is it? Is today?
They were closed through Thursday.
Is today Wednesday?
Yes, it is. Breaking news, it's
Wednesday. I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but it's been a long week. So they were closed Thursday, tomorrow, and Friday as well. Collier schools as well.
Yes, they joined Collier schools in canceling school the rest of the week, so that's through Friday. We have an update on the power situation. 75% of LCEC customers are without power right now. LCEC serves a fair portion of Lehigh Acres and serves a fair portion of Cape Coral. 75%, so 3 in every 4 customers of LCEC without power. 80% of FPL customers are without power. That was announced at the Lee County EOC meeting about an hour ago. So a fair amount of folks across Southwest Florida dealing with power outages. In fact, we have new numbers on your screen with a map. For anybody who can see it, you can get a sense of what's happening. If you're listening to our simulcast. 440,000 people without power in Lee County, 180,000 people without power in Collier County, 120K without power in Charlotte County. It's a little bit better of a situation in our inland counties, more like between 3,000 and it appears to be 16,000 for some of our inland counties. We mentioned the radio simulcast. At this point, we're not totally sure which radio stations are on the air. However, I got a message from one of the viewers who is listening right now on 103.9 FM. So we are on 103.9 FM for sure, because one of our listeners is listening right now to our coverage, and she's watching our live stream as well. You can watch the live stream if possible of what's happening from ABC7 and NBC2 as we continue our coverage. Right now, we want to continue to show you some video of what this storm has done. In particular, look at this from Tin City today. A power line exploded. There's smoke. At one point, there was fire. I want to add something from a conversation that I had with Florida Power and Light earlier today. I talked to a spokesperson for FPL, and one of the things that he stressed, in addition to the fact that they were going to have to rebuild some of the infrastructure to try to get everybody's power back on, was he wanted everybody to be sure that they were being as safe as possible. If you see a down power line, and look at those flames, but if you see a down power line, for anybody who can't see this, we are looking at an intersection in Tin City. There's smoke and then an explosion with orange flames in a ball right there at the intersection just off the street. When I talked to FPL, they said, be as safe as possible. You see a down power line, stay away from it. Instead, you can call 1-800-4-OUTAGE. That's the number they'd like you to call to deal with some of the problems that you may be seeing.
I got to treat all of those down lines as if they're live. Now you're taking a look at water rushing into a parking garage. This is at Pelican Bay in Naples. The water there is about halfway up most of the cars I can see, for those of you who may be just listening, but the water just rushing into this parking garage. You know, a lot of cars that we have seen just underwater, a lot of damage people are going to be dealing with. Of course, another major concern, the water that is up to people's second floors and their homes. You know, of course, you got to look at these images and remember, luckily, those are just cars. Hopefully, no one was in them. But a lot of people are dealing with some high rising water that they are stuck in.
One of the things that has happened throughout the afternoon in our coverage is we've started hearing about particular areas, and I don't know if it's necessarily because the storm was over that area at the time and then it moved on to something else, or maybe it was just because there was an ability to share some of the information or share visuals from what was happening. But early this afternoon, Naples was an area of focus for us because we were starting to see what was happening there with regards to water. And it was mind-boggling. It was jaw-dropping to see places that we know very well that were covered in water at that point. We have some more video. This is going to be coming from Naples Square to show you. Very stunning and quite frankly, very scary video as you're going to see some of the storm surge. That has created significant problems for Southwest Florida today. It's one of the things that we have been stressing in our coverage leading up to this storm, that storm surge was going to be a major issue. That's why the evacuations for Southwest Florida were so focused on the coastline. When you see the maps of the zones that were told to evacuate, almost the entirety, the majority, the swath, it was happening along the coast because of concerns about storm surge. You can hide from wind, but you run from water. That's what they tell you when you're talking about hurricanes.
Gosh, and you got to remember those rivers, those canals, you know, all that water flows somewhere. So if you're not right by the coast, I mean, you can't assume you're out of the clear. There's those flood zones. Flood zone A, I mean, extends quite a bit further inland in Lee County than I would have expected. So you just got to be very aware of any body of water you're near, or even if you're not, that storm surge is, that water is running out of places to go.
We've been trying to make sure that everybody understands this storm is still happening. It is still going across southwest Florida. The focus has moved a little bit toward the north. Let's talk about an area to our north, and that's Charlotte County, where virtually nobody has power in Charlotte County. We're talking about 127,000 customers total. About 124,000 are now in the dark, so you're running into the 95 to 99% range for the people who are without power right now. So for many of those folks, if they are with us right now, they are most likely only listening because they don't have the power to run the television.
And we are starting to see what people are dealing with. This is in Punta Gorda, a stop sign blown over. This is the threat they're dealing with right now in Punta Gorda. It's a street sign along US 41, right in the heart of the city. That stop sign completely on its side, touching the ground. The octagon of the stop sign is on the ground. You can see it. The wind is just trying to pull it. It is dangerous, dangerous conditions.
The wind took it down to a 90-degree angle, basically, from straight up to straight down and parallel to the ground, just pushing it like that. When you see that, you realize why you don't want to be outside, because if that pulls out just a little bit and starts to go flying, now you have a projectile going through the air, and it can be extremely dangerous. We want to move on to Bonita Beach now and give you a view. This is from Doc's Beach House. Water everywhere. You'd have to wade through it just to get across to the sand as it continues to move. Storm surge, major issue on Bonita Beach. Allison said something earlier, about 10 minutes ago, that I think is very relevant. We're not going to get the full picture until tomorrow, most likely, because we are heading out toward sundown and darkness across southwest Florida. It's not safe at this point to be out on the roads. Law enforcement has talked about they're needing to wait, first responders needing to wait before they go out and try to deal with emergencies. That means people are not going to be able to go out and see what has really happened until most likely the morning after darkness to see what has happened across southwest Florida.
Right, and when Lee County leaders were giving us a bit of an update on their response to this, I mean, they mentioned getting the federal government's help, getting some people temporary shelter outside of Lee County. Of course, for now, Hertz Arena is one of many shelters that is open if you are looking for somewhere to go. We should have a whole list of those shelters on our website, but that really stood out to me, just hearing, I mean, and you can tell by looking at what's been going on today, this is going to be a longer-term recovery effort. I mean, there'll be lots of work to do in our communities.
No doubt about it. And we're going to need federal help. In fact, there is some breaking news on that I wanted to share with you. Florida U.S. Senator Marco Rubio, Florida U.S. Senator Rick Scott, and the entire Florida congressional delegation have now sent a letter to President Biden in support of Governor Ron DeSantis, requesting a major disaster declaration in response to Hurricane Ian. A lot of what that will do is just free up recovery, monetary efforts that can come to Florida, get the federal government involved, so hopefully the rebuilding process can start and take place. And as the Lee County manager talked about, Lee County, he believes, has been decimated, and it's going to take months to recover and rebuild from this, and it is not over. It is still happening right now. There is the possibility for continued damage as this storm continues to move north. We're going to send it over to ABC 7 Chief Meteorologist John Patrick, who is continuing to track this storm as it moves across southwest Florida.
And right now, the worst of it is in DeSoto County. We'll fly down here and show you that the northern Eyewall is over Arcadia and western DeSoto County. So right along Highway 17 over to Joshua, you're getting pounded with some very heavy rain and wind right now as well. Nocatee into Fort Ogden and Pine Level. Also note that we have 4 lightning strikes here in this Eyewall. This thing just does not want to give up. It's still producing not as many as we have been seeing, so it is weakening, but it's not doing so willingly. It's still producing a few lightning strikes, a sign that that Eyewall just wants to keep on going, and that is the heaviest portion of the hurricane right now. It's this northwestern side. This is the area that we're inland now, so we're not going to see storm surge flooding here, but we are going to see some rainfall flooding. So it's raining very heavily here right now. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and show you here in a severe weather mode some of our rainfall rates. So this is an, let me go ahead and actually go over into this. This is a product that we don't use that often. Here we go. This is, I can go there and then change the radar site. So this is how heavily it is raining right now. We showed you that this area was lit up in red. So if this were to sit in a place for 1 hour, and in this case, it's very likely, sometimes when we use this, we're tracking a thunderstorm that's moving 15, 20 miles an hour. This is moving 8 miles an hour. So this is moving very, very slowly. So this rain sitting over the same area for an hour, Pine Level, 6.14 inches in 1 hour. 7.2 inches in 1 hour. Let me get a little bit closer here so we can see some more of these communities. Into Platte right here, 6.3 inches. Hull, 5.5. Nocatee, you're just barely outside of that core of the heaviest rain right now. But Arcadia, especially the western side of town, well, Pixel Query, that's about 7 inches of rain in 1 hour. And even over here into portions of Sarasota County, 5.7 inches of rain right near the little town of Sandy. Over towards Joshua, 1.7 inches, but just south of town here, we're looking at 4 to 5+ inches of rain per hour. So we will total up as this sits here. Again, the center of the storm, the eye, is over here. That's moving off to the north-northeast. This is also moving off in this direction to the north-northeast, and that's the western Eyewall. So you're not going to get that break in the weather as if the northern portion of the Eyewall would track through your area. So I'm going to show you what we've received as far as rain so far going back 24 hours. So now we're looking at rainfall totals, and I'm going to back out here because some of these areas like Englewood and Northport here, where you see the white and the little light gray areas, those are the areas that have just gotten pounded. Now, these areas have seen offshore winds, so this is not storm surge that I'm going to show you. This is just rain. And right around Venice, 12.5 inches of rain. Englewood, 15.1 inches of rain. 16.2 inches of rain in Northport. And let me slide in and zoom in here, and we can actually go all the way down here, right along, and actually get some communities here. Since we have South Venice here, 16.7, Manasota, 17.5, Warm Mineral Springs, 16.6, Tarpon Point here at 16.9. This is almost 1.5 feet of water. Not even storm surge. This is just rain that has fallen from that western and northwestern Eyewall that's been persistently over these areas for hours on end, along with the hurricane force winds. Even here into El Jobin, 14 inches, Murdoch, 12 inches, over a foot, 16.6 inches. Let me pan over here and we'll get into some of these communities here. Right along Eleanor Avenue here in El Jobin and over toward Murdoch near the Port Charlotte Town Center. That's over a foot of rain. Into downtown Port Charlotte, it does lighten up a bit, but we still have seen some very heavy rain here, 9 inches of rain, 6.6 in Punta Gorda, Harborview 7.5, and the like. And this is going to continue. It's not going to be quite as heavy toward Englewood and Northport as we're starting to see that heaviest core of the Eyewall lift out of that area right now. Let me go back to radar here. You can see the red is now over Arcadia. This is where we showed you those really heavy rainfall rates, 6-7 inches of rain per hour. But as we get here, it's starting to let up. I mean, it's still pouring rain in Northport and Englewood, but we're not seeing those deep reds and sometimes those purples, which are just extremely heavy rain, and the wind to go along with it. Venice, you're starting to see a little bit less of a heavy rain band on top of you. But it's still going to rain. We still have a lot of this storm, the western side of the Eyewall, to get through. I'm going to go over here and show you the future cast over the next 1 hour for this storm. And we're going to drag this out. We'll actually zoom in here a little bit so you can see how this activity is going to progress through DeSoto County and here in northwestern Charlotte and Sarasota County. So as I mentioned, there's the eye right there. Northern Eyewall over Arcadia and western DeSoto County, as we showed you right there. And we're going to continue to progress this over the next hour. As we get into 7 o'clock, you can see how the Eyewall starts to collapse a little bit more because now it's over land. Even though I showed you those 4 lightning strikes, that's a lot less lightning than what it has been producing over the past several hours. So 7 o'clock, it's going to start moving across Arcadia, and it'll start, at least the heaviest of the rain, where you're getting those 6-7 inch rainfall totals, start to wind down as it pulls off to the northeast. This is a slow process. The storm is only moving at about 8 miles per hour. And to reiterate, even though the storm itself is going to be pulling away, the onshore winds are not going to be pulling away. Those are going to last for at least another day, day and a half. Even as the storm pulls away, we're going to have that pounding wind direction up against our water. The wind will be lighter, but we need the wind to turn direction, because after the storm surge event, this water is going to want to come back out into the Gulf of Mexico. And so long as we have the onshore wind, that's not going to be able to happen. So we need the wind to turn any direction other than onshore. I mean, even a northerly wind, or not so much a southerly wind, but a northerly wind direction would help the situation to allow that water that piles up inland to roll back out into the Gulf of Mexico. And it's going to be quite some time before we are able to deliver on that as far as changing the wind direction. Let's go back over to NBC2 into the studio there. Who am I going to? The desk. All right, Jeff, Megan, over to you.
I understand we've talked to some folks out in Matlacha. Our Jennifer Vaglis, she can get us some more information on what is happening there. Jennifer?
This is the view from Joe Pilato's balcony around noon. And this is that same view just 30 minutes later.
Actually, I think I'm going to go in now.
Ian intensifying right before his eyes. Rainfall getting heavier. Winds growing stronger. Pilato has called Southwest Florida home for more than 40 years. Believing Ian would be no different, Pilato chose to stay in his waterfront home covered in windows and even host extended family.
We didn't think that it was going to be this bad. You know, when they first said that they were thinking a 2, maybe jump to a 3. We've been through that.
Now, after losing power, he's praying Ian will ease up on his vulnerable community.
Just nerve-wracking. If it was just us here, we probably wouldn't be so worried about it, but having all the family and grandkids here, it's a little more concerning. No, if we all make it out safe, it's a blessing, and not really worried about anything else.
Reporting for NBC2, I'm Jennifer Vaglis.
Jennifer, thank you very much. We have some new video that we want to show you. This is Health Park, one of the Lee Health hospitals. Actually, no, we're going to get to that in a second. This is actually from Naples Bay. This is a dock that is floating in floodwater, floating toward Gordon River. Video actually showed the moment after the wood passes under the bridge. Now we are ready to go ahead and show you what's happening over at Health Park in Lee County. This is on Bass Road. It's in between Summerlin and Gladiolus. Health Park, one of the Lee Health hospitals. For anybody who can't see this, this is the parking lot, and the video is maybe a third up the way of the cars that are in the parking lot, maybe half the way up. It has turned this parking lot into a lake. But you think about the mission of Health Park, they are there to try to protect patients and keep them safe. Having a situation with this amount of water cannot be safe. Having to evacuate the first floor of the hospital, not the best situation, but they have made the determination that's the best choice for them at this point. And for those of you that can see the video, you can understand why.
And again, that water is only expected to keep rising for now. As we heard from our team of meteorologists, I mean, they say it's a good thing if it just stays where it's at now, because it could get a lot worse than what we're already seeing. So just definitely something to consider there. Again, the coast is not clear at this point.
Why don't we at this point just run down some of the new information from the last 2 hours since Megan and I have been on the anchor desk here, just to get you caught up if by chance you are now listening on our simulcast or perhaps watching for the first time. The first thing is that there are now curfews in place for a number of parts of Southwest Florida, including Charlotte County, where there's going to be a curfew in place starting in about 2 hours. It will run from 9 to 6. Charlotte County, including Punta Gorda, has a curfew. Marco Island has a curfew that went into effect immediately. Lee County has a curfew that's in effect starting at 6 tonight. So it is already in place for Lee County. Why don't we talk about schools as well?
Schools, yes. Since we've been on the air for the past 2 hours, we got new information that both Lee and Collier County Public Schools are extending one more day of their closure, so they will also be closed Friday of this week. Haven't heard past that, but now those two districts will be closed through Friday.
The power situation is not a good one across Southwest Florida. These two statistics can give you a real sense of the problem that we're looking at. 75% of LCEC customers out of power, and that was from 5:30 at the news conference that the Lake County EOC provided. 80% of FPL customers without power. We also mentioned there's 127,000 customers in Charlotte County. 124,000 of them are without power. That's in Charlotte County specifically. And I want to read the quote again from Roger Desjardins, the Lee County manager, when he talked at the Lee County EOC news conference at 5:30. We are beginning to get a sense that our community has been decimated. This is going to be a very difficult and trying time for the next several months. Roger Desjardins is not a person who is prone to hyperbole. I think he just wanted to make sure that people understood the reality and the severity of the situation that we're dealing with right now.
Right, and I understand Jason Dunning might have someone on the phone we want to hear from. Either way, let's send it over to our team of meteorologists that have been just doing amazing work for us.
Yeah, so I wanted to get a sense of what the scene was like in downtown Fort Myers because our cameras are knocked down. We're having a lot of communication issues. This is not the traditional phoner that we do in television, but I have someone on the line here with me, so I have him on speakerphone. I'm going to hold him up to my microphone. Hyatt DeHaven, I hope you're doing okay there. You're in downtown Fort Myers, correct? Can you tell us exactly where you are in downtown Fort Myers?
Downtown Fort Myers off of Palm Beach Boulevard, across the street from the Wink News station.
Okay, and
it's right off the river here.
Okay, and I understand, my understanding at least is there's been evacuations there, a lot of serious flooding along the Caloosahatchee River. How many floors up are you?
Yeah, I'm 6 floors up, so we have like the hurricane windows are pretty secure.
What are you able to see around you as you look out? Don't put yourself in danger, but I know you said you've looked out the window. Describe what you've seen around you.
Yeah, so we're right off the river, and we can actually see the water like pouring over the seawall, and it's flooding in all of the area on the first floor. So it's almost up to the doors now on the first floor, but it's very predicted of storm surge over this way.
Okay, so you're saying the water is almost up to the doors in the first floor, and you're off of Palm Beach Boulevard in downtown Fort Myers. How big of a change have you seen from now compared to, let's say, an hour ago?
Yeah, an hour ago, the water was probably right at the seawall, just about to like flow over, but now it's totally flowing like all the way to the front doors of our apartment complex. And if you, I went downstairs to kind of get a feel for what's going on in the front of the building, and you can clearly see the storm surge like flooding into all of downtown Fort Myers.
All of downtown Fort Myers, wow. And that's exactly the reports that we've heard. What you're looking at now, the picture beside me, this is a live video from on top of our tower cam. Now this is central Fort Myers, and I think we're actually looking in the direction of downtown Fort Myers. You can't see exactly a lot of detail of what's happening there from downtown Fort Myers, but Hyatt, I want you to stay safe. Please don't go down to any lower floors. I want you to stay up there because this is a situation now where the water is just going to keep continuing to rise. We're right around high tide in downtown Fort Myers, so this is when the flooding is going to get really bad, and we have the winds now pushing onshore up the Caloosahatchee River, so storm surge is going to be something that we're going to be watching very closely, and it's the #1 concern that we have right now. And do me a favor, I'll be in touch with you, and let me know if you notice any big changes there where you are, okay? Thank you.
Yep.
Stay safe.
Thank you so much, Jason.
All right, bye. Go back to the desk.
Welcome back to NBC2 and ABC7's continuing coverage of tracking Hurricane Ian. I'm NBC2's Peter Bush.
And I'm Kelly Burns. We're going to start off the 7 o'clock hour with a little overview of what has happened today. And I think the newest pictures, we have a live picture of downtown Fort Myers, if we could go there, because what is happening now is up I'm sorry, this is video of downtown Fort Myers where you can see some of the flooding because of, again, the storm surge is coming up the river. We heard from the county manager in the last hour, Roger Desjardins, and he said that this is the biggest devastation to hit this community in a long time. The community is decimated.
So you obviously want to know what's going on right now, what's going on with the storm, what's going on with power outages, with storm surge. We also want to start to prepare you for what might be ahead. Speaking about the county manager mentioning that this is going to take months to recover from, not days, not weeks, months. So we will get to all that in this upcoming hour. And our meteorologists have been here throughout this storm with you. They will keep you updated on the track as the storm starts to slowly but surely work its way into Charlotte County, into DeSoto County. The threat is still very much there. That is top of mind for us, so we will make that our priority. But again, there are some notes, kind of news-wise, that we want to keep you updated on.
Do you have the video that we could show, Keith, of Health Park, the parking lot that I had sent in a short time ago? And if you could listen to it, I sent several pieces of video, but if you can listen to it, you hear this.
Oh my lights.
Those are staff members coming to the window to see that their cars have been underwater. These are people who are separated from their families so they can help the community. Their families are at home. They're worried about them. They can't get in touch with them. Many people at the hospital, I am told, homes are flooded, yet they are in service to us. They're at the hospital, and now their cars are being flooded. So there's nothing that, could be done about this, but it is a double tragedy for these people. And just talking to some of the staff members, of course, they're happy to be there to help. They're on lockdown, Team A and Team B. They can't go home to their families, but it really puts in perspective the dedication and the sacrifice that doctors and nurses and members of the staff at Health Park are making to help our community.
First responders across the community are undoubtedly dealing with similar situations. Earlier in the day, not sure if you saw this, but the video of Naples firefighters, a Naples fire station had 3-4 feet of water, and that was several hours ago. It could be even worse by now. Those first responders, those firefighters, presumably drove their cars to the station that day. So these tragic stories are happening all over our community, and we know that there are some people still stuck in their homes with rising water this evening. We've had firsthand accounts of really, really harrowing situations, and so we are aware of all this, and there's nothing more important than your safety. And what you need to know, if you are able to listen to us and you're in a house with rising water, or if someone you know and love, first responders will do the best they can. But right now, they are so overwhelmed with calls for help that they have to basically be in a triage situation where they have to evaluate which ones we can get to realistically without putting themselves in too much danger.
In Collier County, they're able to go out doing that. Lee County first responders can't even respond.
Correct.
Yet. It's still too dangerous, so they are staying inside, and we heard Kevin Ruane say that, the county commissioner saying, and the head of Lee County EMS saying, we will get to you when we can, but we cannot right now. It is just too dangerous. So people are going to have to just wait, and it is devastated. And I was even talking to a friend who says people at the hospital are hearing that family members on Sanibel are flooded and are calling for help, and they can't get to them. And so it is just so devastating for all of these people. And I think the big thing people want to know right now, and I don't know, Allison, if you can tell people, we're getting towards dark. It's going to be dark in about an hour. What are we likely to see in the next couple of hours in Lee and in Charlotte County?
So specifically in Lee County, we could see those waters continue to come up a little bit more. The winds are still really strong. The winds are still very powerful. They're still out of the west. They're still onshore. So it may not be as maximum of an increase of what you've just seen over the past couple of hours, but that increase can continue because these onshore winds are going to continue as well. Now for Charlotte County, it's a little bit different. You're still dealing with the high winds. Now the high winds really kind of focusing in on DeSoto County. And the winds are starting to let up in places like Naples and Marco Island, but we're still having that onshore component. Let me put that in, no, let's take up Doppler 2, please, and we'll kind of show you where those strongest winds are right now. Through DeSoto County, that's where kind of what's left of the edge of that or the eye of the storm is, and we'll do let's show you how strong these winds can be. They're still very powerful, and with the new advisory, we just got the 7 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. The winds are still at 122 miles per hour sustained. It is still moving at 8 miles per hour. That's not fast, but hey, it is on the move at a very slow rate, pushing off to the north and east. So let me see what kind of wind speeds we're looking at here. So kind of higher up in the sky, about 3,000 feet above ground level, we're looking at about 70 to 100 miles per hour. So give or take maybe up to 40 to 60, maybe even 70 for some areas. Over into Charlotte, Cape Hayes Peninsula, we're still dealing with maybe hurricane force winds there, and down farther south into parts of even Charlotte County inland spots are still seeing some. You don't see any reflectivities there in Babcock Ranch or velocity scans, but I can assure you it's still pretty gusty there. We're still having the winds howl here. What happens is once you get out of range from that radar, it's going through too much to kind of see what's going on beyond that scope. But if we could take tower cam, we know that the winds here at the station are still going 40, 50 miles per hour. Look at our camera. Those are not calming down anytime soon. So we will continue to see those winds continue, and it's the direction. The winds will stay out of the northwest, and the more and more we slowly hear from folks in Fort Myers and Fort Myers Shores, the waters are still coming up, and it is above ground level. You know, a lot of people say, hey, well, you know, my home is, you know, built 5 feet up. Is it above ground level or sea level? It's above ground level, and we're seeing those numbers above ground level unfortunately come to fruition. Let me show you the future cast so you can kind of better idea of how long we're still going to be dealing with these onshore winds. And what you want to do is watch the spin of these bands going in as they push onshore. This is 8 o'clock tonight, and that's why I said the waters could still rise, because it's 8 o'clock, the sun is setting, it's dark out, it's cloudy. You have to make sure that you and your family are safe. Make sure you can get to as high of a level as you can. If you have any way to stay on top of the water, if you have a floating kayak around, if you have a floating canoe, if you have a boat that might be able to float until you can find some sort of drier ground, the water's going to keep on coming up. Through 9:30, we still have those onshore winds. We still have some bands of rain. Look, by 11 o'clock, the center of the storm is starting to fall apart, but it's still in maybe DeSoto County, some gusty winds up there, and it will continue. It's not going to be until tomorrow that the winds will still be onshore tomorrow. That's the unfortunate part, but they will be much lighter. And hoping that between the high tide cycles and between the winds letting up just a bit, the waters are able to maybe catch their breath a little bit and not continue to rise. By Friday, the winds are still onshore, but they're also more out of the northwest, and that's not going to be as dangerous or as significant as a westerly or a southwesterly, just based on how our coastline is shaped. Just want to show you again what we're looking at radar-wise. Cape Hayes Peninsula is still dealing with powerful winds. You're going to hear, let me put a storm track on it for you. So through parts of Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte, this is moving at about 8 miles per hour. Port Charlotte, you're going to get more wind, more strong burst of wind, 80, 90 miles per hour, if not higher than that, through 8:41. So that's over an hour from now. That's about an hour and a half from now. Pryor Harbor about 8:01, so just under an hour from now. Harbor View at 8:57, and the rain will continue. We will see the rain start to recede, the rain start to stop, but the waters will continue to rise through parts of anywhere that we've already seen the water move on through, guys. Yeah. Come on, yeah, I'll join you guys on the desk. I'll do a little a camera shot.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but can you talk about what happened at your house?
Yeah, my neighborhood is completely underwater. Yeah, I'm getting pictures from my neighbors. I hope they're okay. I really do. But you know, I'm one of many. I mean, this whole community, we're going to be in this together. So Well, we rebuilt together.
Your dogs are safe.
My
your
dogs are
husband is
safe. My husband is safe.
You can rebuild your house.
I really hope my neighbors are okay. You know, I was getting reports from them. I stopped getting reports for them, and now we're seeing those waters come up. So I'm right there with you guys. I'll be okay.
We love you so much, and we just know that this, and again, we don't mean to put you on the spot, but we care about you so much, and we know
you care about
your professionalism today has been incredible, because I know in the back of your mind that has been such a great concern.
But you know what? Yeah, and I don't know if I'll be able to rebuild or have to knock it down or fix it. I don't know. But I know there's about 20 people in this building that are in the same shoes as I am.
Yes,
So, and out there as well.
But just thank you, I'm sure on behalf of so many of our viewers, for staying dedicated toward their safety and well-being and keeping them informed.
Because you've been here for 24 hours straight for like 5 or 6 days.
I feel like you've been here for about 5 days.
Yeah, I have. I'm not sure what day it is. Someone told me that they were on Sanibel and they left Wednesday. I'm thinking, wait, today's Wednesday. I hope they got out. And I was really concerned, and they did get out, thankfully. I'm really concerned about what we're going to find out tomorrow. You know, we're getting pieces of information. I'm getting pieces of information from my neighbors. I really hope that they're safe. I'm worried about how much that water could continue to come up. And I'm pretty far north on the Caloosahatchee. So anyone west of me on the Caloosahatchee is going to be in the same spot that I am.
I just had a phone call from a dear friend saying, you know, and I'm answering the phone as I'm sitting out here because I want to hear from people that they're okay. And he said, I have about 3 feet of water in my house. Yeah. But I'm going to be okay. Yeah. I'm afraid it was going to go up more. It's going down now. He's in Town and River, so they're
so
just
it is
watching.
going down a little bit.
He says it was up to, you know, he has one of the older homes, a sunken living room, one of the kind of more modern homes. It was up to the, you know, about 3 feet inside. It's starting to go down. So that's good news. In my neighborhood in South Fort Myers, we had water up to the front door. My daughter and my husband evacuated across the street, and they're on a 2nd floor. And the cars were in the garage. The water was in the garage. That's starting to go down now. So hopefully, in a lot of areas, the water is starting to recede.
Because the fear level exponentially grows when the sun goes down.
Yeah.
There are not very many ways in which we were fortunate with this, but I would say one is that the peak of the storm for most people in our viewing area happened to be in the daytime, so that they could at least see the threat coming and start to assess what they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, so many people moved down here recently, and for good reason. This place is amazing.
But they don't know what they're facing, and this was the storm of a century.
You know, it was interesting because, you know, I live in a flood zone, and, you know, you have your flood insurance. I'm like, okay, well, what's the threat here, you know? And you look, and it says, okay, there's never been a flood claim. I'm like, okay. And I knew how high the water came up in my neighborhood during Irma, but I just knew it was such a different storm. And, you know, things are things, and hopefully everyone is safe and found their loved ones and are safe, and I really hope my neighbors are safe.
Yes.
I think a lot of our viewers who were here in 2004 for Charlie thought, this is the one. This is the storm. This is the storm I'll tell my kids and grandkids about. A lot of people who were here 5 years ago for Irma thought, you know what? No, this is the one. This is the one I'm going to tell my grandkids about. This is the one.
You never want to come together after disaster, but you have no choice to. And there's going to be more than you know, when I was up in the Panhandle for Hurricane Michael, it was so awful. But, you know, you feel for those people, but it's not your home.
Right.
And this is my community. And I look at, you know, my neighbor's house. I know who lives where. I know who lives in what spot of Cape Coral, what person lives in what part of Fort Myers Beach.
And you're texting and checking on
and you just know that you see the video and you're like, well,
this isn't good.
This is not good.
And it's going to be that line in your life that's like before Ian and after Ian. Like, it's going to be that, the line in your life. And before that, it was kind of the pandemic. When the pandemic started, it was 2020, March of 2020. And now I feel like this is another
there is no question that this is the defining moment in Southwest Florida in so many ways. We thought our property insurance problems were bad before. I mean, this is going to be, this is going to probably change a lot of things about how we live in Southwest Florida.
I mean, I can't imagine, I can't even quantify how much we're going to have to rebuild.
Oh,
you know?
Tens of billions of dollars.
Yes. Yeah.
Tens of billions of dollars. We are going to need so much help from the federal government.
Let's just hope we don't find out tomorrow we had a lot of loss of life, because we still do not know about Matt's casualties yet. We are asking, we do not know. We do know that, you know, that they've had some water intrusion, as they would say, at Health Park and at Lee Memorial Hospital. They're still treating people there. They're working hard, but they're working under terrible conditions. And I think now we're going to go, earlier today, we had someone call, a friend of mine. Was desperate to get out, stranded on Fort Myers Beach when the water was coming in. And I said, call me and maybe I can get someone to you. And so we spoke to that person on Facebook Live. So we'd like to kind of just go back and show you what was happening during that time, if we could. Okay, sorry to interrupt you, JP. I need to get this out there in case anybody can come help. Can you show me the video of how far the water is? Okay, so where are you right now? Oh my goodness, where are you?
That's the roof of the house next door right there underwater.
So this is in Fort Myers Beach on Cutlass Drive?
Yeah.
18564 Cutlass Drive. It's 4 of us.
4 of us? On Cutlass Drive, and you're on the 2nd floor already?
Yeah, we're all...
6 of us in here. 18564 Cutlass Drive.
Do you have a roof?
There's about 15 feet of water now.
There's 15 feet of water and it's still coming in?
Yeah, it's still a steady rise, and the waves just keep pushing it through the windowsills.
Do you have, and there's 6 of you right now, and what's your address again?
1818, what's the address here, babe? What's the address?
18564.
18564 Cutlass.
18564 Cutlass Drive in Fort Myers Beach?
Yeah, 18465 Cutlass Ave.
Cutlass, and the rest of the neighborhood is underwater as well?
Yeah, I had to swim out of my house. My house was too low. It's pretty much, my house is pretty much gone.
So you're a neighbor across the street?
Yeah, my neighbor, you know, she has a more recent house built up, so we walked over here, or I had to swim over here. You know, just stay in the middle of it. Glad I did, because now my house is underwater.
Your house is underwater. Oh, I'm so sorry. Is everyone out of your house?
Yeah, everyone's out of there. Now we're just in here, and we're dealing with a lot of water in here.
Okay, can you show me how far the water, how high it is up? And can anyone get up on the furniture too as well? Okay, so you're already up on, you have everything up high. Do you have a way to get into the roof?
Go to the roof, don't go in the attic.
Don't go in the attic. Do you have a way to get on the roof?
Yeah, we're gonna have to find out a way here soon.
Okay, so hopefully somebody is seeing this. In the windows that you have there, are they hurricane impact windows?
Yeah, they're hurricane windows.
So the water is coming up against the windows right now. Oh, the storm surge.
Do they have life jackets?
Do you have life jackets right nearby?
Yeah, there should be somewhere around here.
Find something.
Find some life jackets, a cooler, something to grab onto, and make sure that you get up on the counters for right now until, I know the Fort Myers Beach Fire Station isn't far away, but in this kind of weather, I don't know if they're going to be able to come out.
I think their trucks are underwater right now.
Their trucks are underwater right now as well. So,
you got 15 feet of water in here. There ain't much on St. Carlos Boulevard that's not underwater.
So you're right off of San Carlos Boulevard right now?
Yeah, we're right off San Carlos, right there right before the bridge to go on Fort Myers Beach.
Right before the bridge on Fort Myers Beach. Okay. And is it still storming there and raining there?
Yeah, it's blowing over 100. So it's probably blowing 130, 140.
What are the winds there right now, Rob?
We know for sure that they were up to around 120.
Yeah, the winds were up to 120, so that was the pool cage in the pool. But you're on the 2nd floor, or is that the top of the roof?
No, this house is real high. You know, but I don't know. We got to make a little decision here because this is getting worse by the second.
Okay, I don't think it's safe to go outside.
He doesn't have a choice. He has to be ready to get on his roof immediately.
Okay, you need to be ready to get on top of the roof and grab some something that will help you stay afloat.
The most intense hurricane force winds are starting to pull up into the north of where you are. So the worst of the winds will start to relax over the next hour or so, but it's going to remain onshore for several more hours. So the water levels are likely only going to be rising over the next few hours. So it will likely get deeper from where you are right now. So you need to make your decisions as soon as possible, but expect the water levels to continue rising from where they are right now, because even though the winds won't be as strong, they're still pushing water on shore. So whatever you can do that would, something like a life jacket or something that would be able to float is what you want to, keep with you as close as possible.
All right, thank you.
Are you okay? Wait, we have someone on the line. Repeat the address to me. Sure, repeat it 100%. Sorry, slow down.
18564 Cutlass Drive.
18564 Cutlass Drive. Okay.
Fort Myers Beach.
Fort Myers Beach. And it's right off of, and there's 6 of them inside.
And the water's coming up, and we're trying to decide what we're going to do next. The winds are blowing super hard, so I'm not sure what.
I just got off the phone with the fire chief of Fort Myers Beach, and he said right now they don't have emergency crews.
It's right before the bridge. The fire department says they don't have emergency crews to come there right now.
But I got the address to him, and he said as soon as they can deploy someone from
Can you ask him what he thinks they should do? They're on the 2nd floor, and the water's coming up.
Let me get him on the phone right now. I'm going to call the fire chief of Fort Myers Beach.
Chief, so we're gonna talk to him and see.
Hey, Ron, we're on the air again, and I'm wondering if you might
what you should do.
Get some advice for these people that are stuck where they are.
The battery's going to die.
The battery's going to die. They're on the second floor on Cutlass Drive.
So,
what do you think they should do?
They need to get as high as they can from the water and try to ride out the storm. That's the best advice I have, is they need to get as high as they can and try to shield themselves from the wind and the rising water.
But
outside or inside? The phone just died.
As high as they can, wherever they can get to, they need to get
The phone just died.
as quickly as
So we will try to get back in touch with them again, but they said their phone was about to die.
Okay, so for anyone else, if it happened to them, this is certainly happening to other people in Southwest Florida right now. That was a lot to take in, and we're going to be thinking about those people, and we'll get in touch with them. But if it happened to them, this is happening to others. So you need to have a plan right now. You find something that will keep you afloat, but if the water gets up to the point where it's already at your waist and you're at the highest point of your house, don't go into the attic. You need to get on the roof. You need to take your chances and go outside. The wind is awful, but you have a better chance of surviving the wind conditions right now than you do water rising to the ceiling of your home. And so if that happens to you, or you know someone who's in that dire predicament, you need to tell them. Find something that will keep you afloat just in case, and be prepared if the water gets to the point where you know you might drown. You don't have any other way to get out of your house. Have a window, have a door, something that will still open that you can get out.
Because as you heard, Fort Myers Beach firefighters, they're not there. Sanibel, they're not on Sanibel. They can't. They had to go to safety. So they're not there to help right now. So you just really need to come up with a plan in your mind, as you said, ahead of time. If you can grab some life jackets. If the water's not to you yet, it could be to you soon. So get your life jacket, get a floating cooler, get something, and get up high.
Allison, Rob, and JP have been stressing this all day long. The storm surge is only continuing to rise. We are not even at the peak, folks. So let that family's really terrifying situation be a learning lesson for you or for someone you love. If they are in an area that is clearly flooding with storm surge, they need to make a plan immediately and be ready to get out of their homes. As dangerous as it is outside, it will be better than with the water rising to the ceiling of your house, because you can't go in your attic. You'll drown in there. You have to be prepared to get outside where
On
at
your
least you
rooftop
can
or
keep
something.
your head above the water.
Yeah, get a flotation device and try to just ride it out. As the fire chief said, don't go outside. That could be even more dangerous. You saw the waves whipping up against their home on the second floor.
But you have to if that's your
right.
Yes.
Try to go up.
Yes, try to go up. But if you don't have a safe place in your home to go up any farther, your only choice is to go outside at that point. The firefighter was saying, try to shelter yourself from the wind as much as possible, obviously, if you don't have to.
Or if you have to hack through your roof.
If you don't have to be on the roof, but you're going to have to get out of your house at this point and just try and hold on for dear life, because this.
You guys ready?
And maybe, you know, if you're obviously there has to be other people in this scenario on Fort Myers Beach. Look at your surroundings. Try to get to the top of the roof. See what else is in your view. Know that the water is going to be pushing inland. Is there another building in the distance that might have a balcony that you could jump on? Is there anything farther inland that you could identify that might be the next stop, that maybe you can catch your breath before that water continues to rise? Because staying there is only, you have to have some sort of plan to the next step of where you could go that would be a little bit drier, a little bit higher.
Yeah, I know you're shaken up by this, Allison, because you had been warning people for a couple of days that this might happen. And so this is happening now on Fort Myers Beach, but for anybody who is north of there now, take heed to what is happening on Fort Myers Beach, what is happening in Naples, and be aware of that. And please,
hey guys, this is
please,
Sebastian. Just let me know what you want.
make a plan. It's too late for you to get out and to escape, but at least get some kind of flotation device, get some kind of cooler, get something, and keep an eye on the weather. And I know a lot of people are losing power, but you can see us on Facebook, so you can stream that as well.
We have our live stream going on Facebook Live, so the power is going out all over the place. We get it. But most people still have some cell service. You might have internet service, but at the very least on your phone, you can still stream us on Facebook Live. We are on at least 4 radio stations across Southwest Florida: 106.1, 98.3, 96.1, 103.9. The radio signal. That's another way that you can stay with our coverage non-stop. We want you to be informed up to the minute, because unfortunately this is getting more dangerous by the minute.
Make a plan.
In fact, as you were speaking, there's got another emergency alert system. The National Weather Service now has an extreme wind warning over our area, which will incorporate areas of Lee County and up in portions of Charlotte County as well. This is a true catastrophic hurricane landfall right now. Category 4 hurricane. That's we need to stay on top of here. So with that.
Just kind of wanted to play to you. Is my mic? I keep answering the phone and then turning my mic on and off because people are calling me. Sorry, I'm trying to answer a lot of questions for people in our neighborhood.
Have we found out how they're doing?
Yes, that was what. Yes, they are okay. I don't know exactly how they managed to stay afloat. I think they stayed in the house and it didn't get up any farther. I'm working to find that out, but as far as I know right now, they are okay.
Okay. We want to go to NBC2's Kyla Gaylor, because she just spoke with somebody with Florida Search and Rescue who is, as we speak, trying to get to people who are trapped in their homes. Kyla?
Yeah, I was just talking to Florida Search and Rescue. They told me they do have crews out on Fort Myers Beach right now, which we know is one of the worst areas where we've seen flooding, and many people we think could be trapped there. I know from personal experience, yesterday I was out on Fort Myers Beach all day. I was talking to a lot of people, and many people told me they were either waiting to decide to evacuate or they weren't going to evacuate. They were going to hunker down. That was not the advice that we were giving people, because we knew this was coming, but many people chose to stay anyways, and now many of those same people are trapped. So Florida Search and Rescue tells me they have 3 boats out there, and they are trying to get to as many people as they can. They told me they had a report of one person who was trapped with several animals, another report of a person who was swimming with a gash on their head, suffering from hypothermia. So, you know, the things that we are possibly going to find out over the next couple of hours, couple of days, it's just going to be heartbreaking, and it's certainly going to be a very long night, considering the storm surge threat is not over. The storm itself not over. You know, we were talking about earlier how the winds have died down a little bit. That's why I feel safe being out here in this garage where we're kind of protected from the wind and the rain. But you can see behind me, you know, this storm is still raging on. You can see the trees just howling in the wind gusts blowing nonstop, rain just going sideways right now. So I am really thinking about those crews because, by the way, that is a volunteer agency. So they are out there trying to help as many people as they can. They basically step up when first responders are not available, and we do know right now first responders are not going out because it is too dangerous. So hopefully they can get to some people before it's too late. Kelly, Peter?
Let's actually go to ABC 7 Chief Meteorologist John Patrick, who's still watching the storm. We know that this is still a huge, huge event for folks in Charlotte County, even in Lee County and DeSoto County.
It is still an event for some of our northern communities right now. And before it gets dark, we have one camera still working on the neighborhood weather network, and it's from Kalia Bay. And this is looking live. This camera is working right now. You can actually see it bouncing up and down a little bit. Tough to see out there with all the rain that continues to fall, even though the gustiest of the winds have pulled well to the north of the Naples area right now. We are still seeing that onshore push from the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, look how high Kalia Bay is right there. And some of that, of course, is spilling over into some of those coastal communities. We've seen the camera's been down for hours now, but the Naples Grand Beach Resort, I'm going to actually go down and show you this image. And again, this is from hours ago, but you can see some of the storm surge that was continuing to happen at Naples Grand Beach Resort. Let's see. There we go. Take a look at this. Again, this is a frozen image from a while ago, so the situation has only gotten worse from this point. But look at how high some of that water is, and that was from earlier this afternoon. So back on our Doppler radar, I do want to show you that we still are tracking that Eyewall with Hurricane Ian. And right now, we've got some very heavy rain falling right here in this area of purple, right here. So this is near Cubitus, Washington Street, up to Northeast McIntyre Street, and down to about Roan Street and Northeast Roan Street over there. So that is some incredibly heavy rain. Let me go ahead and show you the rainfall rates from the radar site there. And we are looking at, right in here, we'll see about almost 7.5 inches of rain if that were to sit there for the entire hour. This is moving very, very slowly. You're going to see an incredible amount of rain in that area. And as we go through the next hour, a lot of that will continue to lift off to the north. So let me back out here and show you the center of the storm, or the eye, is right in here. I'll go ahead and draw it in case you're having a little bit of a difficult time seeing it there. It's kind of a disorganized center right now. And if you're listening to us on the radio right now, the center, or the eye, which is thankfully starting to fall apart pretty rapidly here, we are looking at this to encompass eastern DeSoto County and northeastern Charlotte County. So this would be well to the north of Babcock Ranch now. And you see it starting to fill in. So that's an indication that this eye wall, or this eye, is starting to fall apart. We still have some very heavy rain up into Hardy County, Highlands County, just to the west of Sebring. Here in northwestern DeSoto County, and even into Arcadia, we have some very heavy rain and some very windy conditions there right now. We'll zoom down in here and show you that the backside of this moving very, very slowly through Arcadia right now. But as we go over the next about, I'd say 30 to 45 minutes, we should be able to get at least most of this out of Arcadia. So we're going to move this off to the north. Oh, that's about 23 minutes from right now. Our time right now is 7:33. So that'll be lifting out of Arcadia. We have another band here setting up. This is the south side of the storm. Right now it is over Englewood and Schaefer and Cape Hayes and Gasparilla. Again, producing some pretty powerful winds. This is the southern half of the hurricane that's moving through the southern Eyewall. And I want to show you some of the winds associated with that out of the radar site velocity mode here. So we can go ahead and show you that around Rotunda, it's 90 miles per hour, 85 miles per hour, Gasparilla, around Boca Grande, 85 miles an hour as well. And the radar beam, when you get this far, we're taking this data from the National Weather Service radar site, and that is produced in Tampa. So when you get this far south, that radar beam is 4,300 feet above ground level. So the winds at the surface will actually be a little bit lower than some of these numbers. We're looking more like 80 to 85 at Rotunda, but still hurricane force wind, and about 75 to 80 in those numbers that are reading 80 to 85. We knocked those back a little bit because of the reading coming from a few thousand feet high into the hurricane. But that is still a very high wind gust, and we're still seeing here 107, look at that, 104. Again, into El Jabin and Port Charlotte, we're seeing that type of wind about 3,400 feet off the ground. A little bit closer to the Tampa radar, but still a couple of thousand feet high. In Punta Gorda, we're seeing that wind. And keep in mind, the wind direction now is starting to orient itself from the west. So we've been talking about storm surge and this persistent push of wind from the Gulf of Mexico onshore. And it's very heavy wind right now in Charlotte County and DeSoto County. Hurricane force winds absolutely going on in those areas right now. Let me clear this off. And I just want to show you, we'll go down to Collier County, and we'll show you this same product. We have to switch over to the Miami radar because they're a little bit closer. And the wind here is getting a little bit better as far as the speed. We've got a 48 mile an hour wind in Everglades City, but that's almost 4,500 miles, 4,500 feet off the ground. So it's more like 40 to 45 in Everglades City. We're not at hurricane force winds here. Certainly tropical storm force winds. Over toward Marco Island, we may get a bad reading over here because the data sort of breaks up, but about 45 to 50 miles per hour there, and that's about 6,600 feet off of the ground. So we're looking towards the order of maybe about 40 miles an hour or a little bit less on Marco Island. So the wind event here for Collier County, yes, it's kind of gusty still, but the hurricane force winds, the threat of that is done here in Collier County. And that's going to work north as we go through the night and progress through the evening. We're still going to track storm surge. That's still a major, major threat. We've seen it already in Collier County and in Lee County. It's going to start happening in Charlotte County. We've got the River District of Fort Myers right along the Caloosahatchee. We've been talking about the possibility of the storm surge going up the Caloosahatchee, and that's exactly what is happening here, because you're taking water that's being pushed from the Gulf of Mexico and you're funneling it into a narrower area. So you're taking water from a very large area. I mean, even from the bay here in the mouth of Caloosahatchee, it's wide all the way up through Fort Myers. And as you get into Bayshore, North Fort Myers, and out here toward Olga, that river narrows. And so when you force that same amount of water into a lesser space, it's forced to rise more quickly than it would if you had a big open area like towards the mouth of the Caloosahatchee. So the storm surge is being exacerbated by the narrowing of the Caloosahatchee. As we get into Charlotte County, those winds are starting to turn onshore now. So we're going to start seeing more of a storm surge event as we get into the next several hours this evening. And being that this is happening now as dark encroaches the area and we are losing the daylight, it's going to be extra dangerous along the Peace River and Charlotte Harbor, the Myakka River and the Peace River, because we're not going to be able to see as well like we did around Fort Myers Beach and Naples as that event started to happen in those areas. We're not going to be able to see as much because we're approaching darkness now here across Southwest Florida. So we're going to have to pay attention to those. We're going to have to watch the river gauges very, very closely, which we'll continue to do through the evening. And we'll continue to track the rain and the wind as we get through the next several hours. And we continue to track this slow-moving storm. Again, the latest advisory has the winds down a little bit, but also we're moving this very, very slowly at about only about 8 miles per hour off to the north-northeast. Here's the 7 o'clock advisory right here popping up. And you can see 125 is the wind, moving north-northeast at 8 miles per hour. We'll get another advisory here in about 20 minutes or so from the Hurricane Center. We'll be waiting for that. Right now, let's go over to meteorologist Jason Dunning over at NBC2.
Thanks, JP, and I'm joined with meteorologist Rob Duns, and we're going to talk about just some more aspects of the storm that we wanted to point out. One thing we've noticed with these new advisories is that even though the storm is weakening, and that's some good news, winds down to 125 miles per hour, the wind field, so the extent of the hurricane force winds and the extent of the tropical storm force winds are expanding as the storm kind of uncoils. So the storm is essentially growing larger after it made landfall, and that's something that typically happens with these systems. So meteorologist Rob Duns is going to kind of draw on here.
Let's not forget too, by the way, 125 sustained is still Category 3 strength.
Still a major hurricane,
for sure.
So, you know, while it's good that it's no longer a Category 4 hurricane, we're still talking about a major storm. I mean, the winds are still very severe, even into Lee County. And I know we have a lot of folks listening on the radio, so we understand that. We're going to be as descriptive as possible. So what we're looking at on the NBC2 First Alert Live Doppler radar is the actual core of the storm. The eye has made it into Arcadia, up into DeSoto County. So you might be wondering, okay, so why are the winds still so severe? Well, that part of that has to do with the fact that the wind field has expanded. So the tropical storm force winds go out 175 miles from the center of circulation. So Rob is going to plot that on the map. So we'll plot it from right about there. So there's the center that Rob is drawing. And as we use the measuring tool, we'll go south from there. So we're going south from DeSoto County, and well, I mean, you have to pretty much zoom out all the way down past Collier County, and that's the extent of the tropical storm force wind. So we'll put a new measurement on there. Still down below Marco Island, the tropical storm force wind field. Now remember, the tropical storm force winds go from about 40 miles per hour to 74 miles per hour. But this is the wind field that we're dealing with. So even though you see the eye here and you don't see a lot of rain filled in here on that southern side, we're still dealing with some very, very strong winds. So when we tell you that this storm event is not far from over, I mean, this is kind of showing you and illustrating that for you. Now, the hurricane force winds, Rob, go out 50 miles from the center of circulation. So let's get a better indication of that, and we'll draw that again here for you. So there's the center. For those of you in Arcadia right now, you're getting the worst of the weather. You're seeing those winds up to about 125 miles per hour. Yeah, we'll zoom out a little bit more here. So those hurricane force winds, if we draw this down straight to the south, are still as far now south as northern Collier County. So that's why, for those of you in Bonita Springs and Estero, Cape Coral, I'll list off as many communities as I can, because I know there's a lot of you are listening on with our radio partners, Lehigh Acres, Gateway. We're still looking at those really strong wind gusts. Thankfully, the rain threat, the flash flooding threat, that part of it is wrapping up. But now, of course, we have to deal with the storm surge threat. Something else that Rob and I were noticing, if we can take the tower cam, please. And we're going to pan it around. We know a lot of you have lost power. I would say the majority of us have lost power. But you can just kind of see, as we look across the landscape there are some bright spots across the city of Fort Myers. And I think I see one of the high rises there as we look toward downtown Fort Myers. But there is a lot of darkness tonight across Fort Myers and all of Southwest Florida from those powerful winds from Hurricane Ian. But just to give you a sense of the power outage as we pan over to the right, so we're going to look over toward the northeast, and you can see some traffic signals still up. But as we look over, we're looking over toward Fowler right now and out toward Evans Avenue, I believe.
Peter, do you by chance know what might be lit up so well there?
Yeah, what is that?
Whatever is there certainly has electricity at this point, but it's possible this could be some sort of facility that would have some sort of generator.
Tell me where you're pointing again.
So from this perspective, we're looking. If you look at me, Peter, we're looking that way toward the northeast.
From our
northeast. So you're looking to the northeast from central.
Across Fowler, yeah.
Could it all the way across Fowler? Could it be all the way up to? No, it wouldn't be the substation, the FPL station off Palm Beach Boulevard. It's not
a little farther, yeah.
I'll jump on Google Maps and see if I can see
we'll find out. We'll find out where those lights are coming from. Rob and I thought that was interesting.
Okay, so it's just east of downtown Fort Myers, probably. I mean, sometimes you just get lucky, and there's certain pockets. I remember after Irma, it seemed just random. It wasn't necessarily that a neighborhood was right next to the hospital or something, and that the grid that FP&L would be most inclined to, to fire up again. But some people at the station never lost power, but most people lost it for a few days or even a couple of weeks. And so sometimes you just get lucky, and there's a couple of neighborhoods that the way that they set up the grid, that theirs didn't topple over.
It seems based on the Google map that I'm able to pull up on my phone, this is somewhere over by where the UPS area is at. So perhaps they have some sort of generator back.
Oh, that's probably what it is.
It's industrial area back there off of like Hanson and Edison and...
That'd be one heck of a generator.
Yeah.
There are some pockets of lights here and there at some of these apartment buildings, but you know, it's certainly more darkness than light that you would tend to see at this time of day.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Since we are just talking about power real quick, we just got an update. 1.4 million power outages across the state confirmed.
Wow, that's I mean a huge number. You know what? If we can pull it up, and I could come over here and help out with that. But we have a way where we can show all the power outages across county by county across Southwest Florida and give you an idea of the percentages, folks.
Yeah. So this is from Department of Emergency Management from the state. 1.4 million power outages confirmed so far. And they're showing
there it is. There it is.
where we can specifically show some of those.
Look at the
Lee County, 450,000 alone.
Yeah, I can look at the percentages, but I'll have to
Population of Lee County is about 800,000, so I actually would have assumed it would be more, but I suppose there's some people maybe in the eastern part of the county who...
You know, I've spoken with my husband already, and he sent me a picture about 20 minutes ago of the house, and I still have power. I'm in Lehigh Acres, and I still have power right now.
So 200,000 people in Collier, 450,000 in Lee. So more than half. And do we know if these are kind of up to the minute, or it's possible that...
Let's go to Doppler 2, and I've got a percentage for you, county by county. 96% of Lee County without power, based on the information that we have right now.
Well, then it's definitely more than 400. You know, sometimes if it might be 450,000 customers, in which case a customer has multiple people in the home. So that computes.
And LCEC said 75% of their customers were out of power, 75%, so that's mostly Cape Coral and the Barrier Islands. And then FPL said 80% of its customers in Lee County, so it must have been everybody but Lehigh out of power.
Like, yeah.
So if we have 1.4 million power outages, that means households, maybe you double that or even triple it, because you know you got kids and multiple kids. So we're talking maybe 3 million or more people already. In Lee County, in our viewing area, there's just under 2 million. So most of Southwest Florida, and then starting to extend already into some other parts of the state as well.
And for those who are listening, the map that Jason Dunning has brought up here shows that Arcadia is listed at being more than 99% of the county is without power. I apologize, DeSoto County. Charlotte County right now is listed at being 98% without power. Lee County right now being listed at 96% without power. There'd be, what was that, 41.5% for Highlands County. And then both Glades and Glades and Hendry County range between 50 and 56% without power. And then across Collier County, at least right now, based on the data we have available to us, that's coming in at 76% without power. So if you're listening to us over the radio because you are without electricity, there are a lot of other people that are in your position right now, so you can understand how it takes time to get back to
this is pretty similar. This is pretty similar to the power outage situation that we had after Irma. So if you're sitting at home and wondering, when am I going to get the power back on? You might just think, oh, how long was I without power from Hurricane Irma? That might be wishful thinking, honestly, because we don't know.
Because FBL says, they say they've made a lot of improvements since then. They buried some lines. They have this remote center that they can power shoot things more quickly. So hopefully we learn some lessons.
Yeah.
So let's go. The sheriff is giving us an update right now.
Lee County Sheriff Carmine Marcino.
Horrific event has hit us real hard. I will tell you first and foremost, I can't say enough to our great Governor DeSantis, who's been in constant communication, Senator Rick Scott, constantly calling our Attorney General, the CFO, Jimmy Petronis. At every level, government is working to make certain that we have everything that we need to keep these residents, the great residents of Lee County, safe. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges that we face. We don't even know exactly what we face just yet. We know we've been hit very hard. We got calls coming into 911, and we are prioritizing them so that the second it goes under 45 miles per hour, we get back out there with 1 second. We're going to be right out answering those calls. Reports of buildings compromised. We have reports of vehicles being just floating out into the ocean. We have a lot of different things that are coming in, but we don't know exactly what it is. Again, we're not out there. The frustrating part is that we're waiting. We have strategically placed resources all over our county, hundreds of deputies waiting for the green light to go back out and help people that are in need. We are going to do everything possible on our end, utilizing all the tools that we have. Our governor's made it clear he's going to send us everything that he has, all resources, all hands on deck. Again, every level, our county manager, Roger DiGirelli, our county commissioners, we are all working together. That's what makes this state great. It's not just the great residents, it's all of us together, because we're in this together, and I don't have all the answers. The one thing I do have is absolute, and that is a message that's very clear for any of those individuals that think they're going to go out there and loot or prey on people during this horrific event. You better think twice. When I say zero tolerance means we will hunt you down, track you down, and you're going to jail if you're lucky. We're not going to tolerate that. I know we had a report of one incident where someone tried to loot into a gas station. I don't know the details, but it's infuriating, and we're not going to allow it. We are a great law and order state. We need to access the people that need to be helped. Their life and safety is most important. But my message is very clear to those that think they're going to loot. Go somewhere else. Leave the state. Don't do that in here, not in Lee County. We're assessing everything as we go along. Again, I don't know what the sustained winds are right at this moment, but I do know they're over 45. I can't wait for us to be able to get out there immediately and access. Again, we want to be safe, and we want to get there as soon as possible. I'll take questions from anyone. We have drones, we have aviation. Everything is on standby, all assets on deck, all hands on deck.
How do you enforce a curfew?
I'm sorry?
How do you enforce a curfew?
Well, right now the curfew came out, and we can't get out there to enforce it immediately right now, but we want people to know. I mean, this could change right now. We could change 5 minutes from now. Those winds go down, we're going to be out there. We want people, we educate people, we make them aware. As a last step is enforcement. We need to protect those that are in need right now. We don't know exactly what's out there. There are residents that are desperate for help. Their homes are compromised. Businesses are compromised. We have water issues. So our message wants people stay off the roadways and let us assess it.
You're going to be pulling every car that's on the road after 6 o'clock out?
I'm not pulling every car. First, it's life, safety, health, and welfare. So we're going to be out there to make sure those calls for service, the people that are waiting and in need, we're going to address that immediately. But make no mistake, in the big picture, there is a curfew. Again, that's put in place to protect the residents of this county. Once we get past that point, when it can be lifted, it'll be lifted. But I need to make certain that, things are protected when they're vulnerable. Again, life, safety, property.
Sheriff, we're getting phone calls from people saying they're trapped in their attics. 911, we're told, is down. What do you say to those folks tonight?
My heart is with them. I have no words. It's frustrating for me. I want to personally go out there with my team and find the people that need help. And I want to help everybody. But we can't compromise other life too. When we told people in the very, very beginning, please listen, this is a mandatory evacuation, we can't force people out of their homes. Some people, which I understand, made that choice to stay. So right now, just do the best you can to get to higher ground. Go to the second floor. I don't know exactly what the statistics are. I don't know what I'm looking at. What are the incidents? But all I can say is those that are in need, we want to get to you, and we will get to you as soon as possible, not waiting 1 second. And again, I don't know the exact time frame. Thinking about the sustained winds, when is that going to die down? This has really, this really hit us hard. So we're moving as we go and making those decisions as we go. But one thing we won't hesitate is getting to those in need, and we'll do that immediately.
I'm sure you've been busy. Do you know how many how many 911 calls we've taken?
I don't know the exact amount of numbers of calls. I will get you that if you'd like. I do know calls are coming in, and a lot of calls are coming in saying, look, we got vehicles floating into the ocean. We have rooftops. We have buildings that have been compromised. One set of buildings collapse. Again, we're not out there assessing, and until we get out there to get a true and accurate assessment, I can't say what we have or don't. I still want people to call 911. We are always taking those calls, and they'll go on a list. You know, obviously prioritizing life immediately, things that are of nature that we need to address. We're going out the second we can.
And we're reporting 911 is down in Lee County, and I believe calls are being rerouted to Collier.
Well, I know that people had said that it was down, but my system is, as far as I know, it's up and running. But if there are issues, of course, they may get rerouted. But we are in total communication with all our surrounding agencies, so we're working together. If that's happening, we would know immediately, and we should know immediately. But I can tell you we're taking calls as we speak, and again, just prioritizing them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Lee County Sheriff Carmine Marcino really reinforce the message that emergency responders are not going to be able to get out on the roads and respond to these 911 calls until the winds calm down below tropical force level, which is 45 miles per hour.
And that could be hours from now. And also, he just gave a warning, of course, about looters, which happens a lot of times after storms, that they are going to be out patrolling for that. But I don't, we had heard there were reports of looting already going on, but I don't think that's been confirmed.
Yeah, Fort Myers police addressed it and said, this did not happen at a gas station. Not to say that it wouldn't happen in the future. Certainly something none of us want to see, but that is not a confirmed story right now.
We're total concern right now. We're worried about just getting people and the safety and assessing the situation. That might not come till daylight. Hey, he was talking about, again, the surge and assessing the situation. Let's head on over to Rob. Can you talk to us a little bit more? People are they're texting, they're calling, they want to know when these winds are going to die down.
It's going to be a while. With the 8 p.m. advisory just came in a moment ago, I just want to read this off this piece of paper here. Pressure is holding at 960 millibars, but the winds have died down just very modestly. Compared to 1 hour ago, we now have sustained winds still at 115 miles per hour, which means this is still, after all this time, holding at Category 3 strength. And again, the worst of this right now moving across areas of Charlotte County and DeSoto County. JP?
I have it on ABC Leaks 1 if you want to take that.
So how long has this storm been a hurricane? How many hours now? When was
since a hurricane, it's been a couple of days now.
It's been
hurricane.
a long time.
But I mean,
like when did it make landfall?
When did it make landfall?
No, it was shortly after 3. I don't remember the exact minute. I want to say 3:03 or somewhere in there.
So around 3 o'clock it made landfall, and then
it's
still going.
We're almost 5 hours later, and it's still a hurricane.
Still kicking.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's the advisory up right now.
So again, to see there. Maximum sustained winds at 115 miles per hour. And unfortunately, the key component here we're looking at right now, if you're asking about the surge, or if you're in DeSoto County or Charlotte County and you're asking about when are the winds finally going to start to relax, the forward speed just isn't changing. It is still moving to the north-northeast, and it is only moving at 8 miles per hour. Now, Peter and Kelly mentioned in coming off of that press conference how the first responders really can't go out in the elements right now until those winds drop to a safe level for the first responders. But the expansive wind field, and my colleague Jason Dunning is building a great graphic we're going to show you here as soon as it's ready. The expansive wind field of this hurricane is really quite something, because at the moment the tropical storm force winds, as Jason passed along to me, extend out 175 miles from the center of the storm, and we still have hurricane force winds that I believe we're out 50 miles from the center of the storm. So even though this has been on land for quite some time, it is still a very serious hurricane for southwest Florida. Actually, if we could ask the control room to Doppler 1 as the source at the chroma wall here on the NBC side, Jason Dunning can explain that wind field further. Jason?
Yeah, just breaking down the information from the National Hurricane Center, and I want you to be able to visualize this. This started out as a more compact storm after it made landfall. Now that we are seeing some weakening, the wind field, as we talk about, so essentially how far out do those strong winds go, have expanded. And what I've done is I've drawn the area here in orange. Those are the tropical storm force winds. Those go all the way up to central Florida, Orlando, and as far south as the southern tip of Florida near the Florida Keys. So Naples still in those tropical storm force winds. The hurricane force wind field also expanding. That goes out 50 miles from the center. That includes all of Lee County, all of Charlotte County, Babcock Ranch, Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, and DeSoto County. And the system now, and Rob, remind me again what the forward speed is with the new advisory?
North-northeast at 8 miles per hour. So
okay, so
unchanged
still is the same. It hasn't changed from the last advisory. So what I'm going to work on here in just a second is I'm going to project this into the future to give those listening and those who are still able to view an idea of when those high winds will start to move out. Rob, I'm getting a lot of questions from different communities. Somebody texted me and said, hey, we really want to know what's going on in Babcock Ranch, so maybe now's a good time we can go sort of community by community and talk about conditions there.
Sure, that sounds great. If I could ask the control room then to switch our sources, we're going to go Doppler 2 graphics to the chroma wall, and we'll need to adjust the camera shot. So I'm going to turn this over to the interactive hand tracker so I can control this over from the wall. And as Jason mentioned, if you're outside of DeSoto County and outside of Charlotte County, you're probably a little more curious as to what's going on, because if you're in DeSoto County and Charlotte County, you are still very much hunkered down here. You know, when you look at the impacts here based on what the radar returns are showing, the worst of the hurricane, where we still have the most substantial hurricane force winds, are still moving across communities in DeSoto County and areas of western Charlotte County. You'll notice there is still some torrential rain falling across Sarasota, and then points northward up US 17 up into areas like Hardy County, which of course is just outside of our viewing area here in our community. Now, in terms of the wind speeds here, I'll try to push this a little bit closer so that you can see these values a little more clearly. We can pull this back out and we'll take a look here at a scan of the velocity product. Let me switch the site there 1 second. So here's a look at the velocity product. And again, as my colleagues both here at NBC2 and ABC7 have been explaining to you, when we look at this product, we're looking at what the wind speeds are up and above the surface. So right now it is 8 o'clock on the dot here, and we are still seeing evidence at beam height of winds at more than 100 miles per hour. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit closer. This here on the map would be Fort Ogden, again to the west of US 17, and then here to the north of Lake Susie. If you're in this area right now, we still have evidence of sustained winds well up and above 100 miles per hour. This is still, as of 48 seconds ago, been listed as a Category 3 strength hurricane with maximum sustained winds still holding at 115 miles per hour. That's only a very modest change compared to 60 minutes ago, even though the eye is now completely on land and been removed from the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. This is still holding on, and it is still a very formidable hurricane here, bringing some terrible weather to communities across Charlotte County. I'm going to do some pixel query points here. Give me a moment to select the right tool. So for those of you who are listening on the radio, we're looking at pixel query points of winds up and aloft in the atmosphere. So at radar beam height, and still seeing evidence right now over Port Charlotte, Murdoch, El Jobin, Deep Creek, Ridge Harbor, and Charlotte Park of winds in excess of 100 miles per hour. This again is all part of the leading edge of the Eyewall that's been moving to the north-northeast exceptionally slowly here. At forward speed is what's really making this a far worse event, because it just doesn't want to clear out of the area at all. So if we were to put this into lapse mode, we can get an idea of the swirl here. Oops, let me put this back into lapse mode right there. You can get a better perspective of just how slow it's just kind of spinning its wheels here, as you notice, as the heavy rain continues to move across western DeSoto, all across western Charlotte, especially across the Cape Hayes Peninsula. Since we're looking at the rain totals here, why don't we take a look at what that's been upgraded to now in the past 24 hours. And these numbers are really quite substantial. You know, Charlotte County may not have the worst of the storm surge, but by far you have had the worst of the rain. Some updated rain totals here across the western side of Charlotte County. San Casa now coming in at 17.7 inches. Manasota Key, they're close to Lemon Bay, is coming in at 16.4 inches. Communities on Rotunda are now coming in at 16.3 inches. And in Englewood, they're between southern Sarasota and northwest Charlotte County. Look at that. 18.3 inches of rain in just the past 24 hours. So you don't even need storm surge to have major flooding in the western sides of Charlotte County and across all of southern Sarasota County. As we move the maps further to the east, again, a pixel query of some of these values across Charlotte County shows 15.7 inches of rain in Murdoch in the last 24 hours, 18.4 inches of rain in the Northport area. And then as you move closer to Port Charlotte, at least the values come back to around a foot or less. But again, this is rain that has fallen only in the past 24 hours. So this is some really, really, really substantial rain. And because it is still absolutely pouring in these communities, these values are going to go up overnight tonight. So freshwater flooding is also a big concern for areas of Charlotte and DeSoto County tonight because of the very slow forward speed of our hurricane as it again drifts to the north-northeast at a very stubborn 8 miles an hour. You never want to get hit by a hurricane, but if you do get hit by a hurricane, you want that hurricane to move as fast as possible. And unfortunately, our hurricane has gone from moving like 15 miles per hour 2 days ago to around 10 miles per hour yesterday, and is now slowed down to just 8 miles per hour. And it's simply prolonging the rain, it's prolonging the risk of storm surge, and prolonging the impacts here that are going to be felt for several months in our community here. Now, I wanted to switch things up just for a moment and revert back to the concept of storm surge. This is still a significant and dangerous issue for areas of Collier County and Lee County because we have seen evidence of substantial storm surge flooding in Collier County and substantial surge flooding in Lee County as well. So when it comes to this storm surge risk, there really isn't any kind of immediate good news. The reason why is because our winds, they just don't want to change around here. This is a look at the wind field here as we move to the next 60 minutes through 9 o'clock tonight. To end the risk of additional storm surge flooding, what has to happen is these winds have to drastically slow down or this wind direction has to completely change around. Remember yesterday when the water values in Charlotte Harbor and the Caloosahatchee and Naples Bay were going down? It's because we had an offshore wind. The air was pushing air from land and toward the water. But now, in the wake of this hurricane, as the eye again continues to swirl across DeSoto County, the movement of air around the hurricane continues to give us this onshore push of wind. So for our friends who are without electricity and listening to us over the radio, we're looking at, sustained winds to wind gusts up between 20 and 40 plus miles an hour throughout the next several hours, region-wide in every community in Southwest Florida. It continues through 10 and 11 o'clock tonight. And for those who are able to see us on TV, notice again the direction of these wind arrows moving right in from the west. If you're listening to us on the radio, we're looking at a wind field graphic with onshore winds out of the west throughout the entire night tonight. This means the risk of surge flooding stays in place overnight, and we have to be concerned about the water in some communities potentially being higher from where it is right now because these winds don't back off. It's very difficult for the water in storm surge situations to recede if the water never backs off. If the wind never backs off, it's very difficult for the water to start to recede. Notice the timestamp here. This is Thursday at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the winds have barely budged. Remember, the forward speed of the hurricane is only at 8 miles an hour and to the north-northeast. So trailing behind it, those winds continue to move in from the west and southwest. So the risk of this storm surge continues into Thursday, and it's essentially all of Thursday because through about 11 o'clock and noon on Thursday afternoon, notice again, our winds values just don't want to change.
Does that mean the water if it stays like that, will the water levels go up or will they stay the same?
Well, I guess
people whose homes are flooding are wondering, like,
in the nooks and crannies and canals and things, when water gets stuck somewhere, it's very difficult for it to get out, especially if the air is just simply pushing back on it. So it's going to take a very long while, as Jason Dunning joins us here, for this storm surge event to recede, and especially. So
the storm surge water levels in people's neighborhoods could actually increase, or do you think it'll stay the same?
I think it will eventually level off after we see the peak surge tonight.
Okay.
But over the next couple days, it's just going to be very slow to recede because the winds are not going to be pushing offshore.
But possible, somebody watching and saying, hey, the water's close to my house, but it hasn't gone in. It's possible that it'll stay there.
Yes, and stop rising once we get past the peak part of the event tonight. Remember, a lot of areas right now are seeing their highest tide.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Step over here. There's something else I wanted to show you too while we're getting into the wind field. Rob, we were talking about how showed you this graphic, or just made this graphic for you to show you the wind field. And the area in orange, that's the extent of the tropical storm force winds. And look how massive that is. This is a huge storm. And the area in red, those are the hurricane force winds extended outward 50 miles. So for those of you listening, I know a lot of you cannot see what I'm pointing at. So the tropical storm force winds now go just north of Orlando up through central Florida, Tampa, all the way across the state to Melbourne, down to Fort Lauderdale, and still in Collier County down in Naples. And this is based on the American forecast model. So I just put this together in you know, just a few minutes to give you an idea of when some of those hurricane force winds will start to exit. So for some of us, we'll stop the clock here. This is tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Granted, the storm will be much, much weaker by the time it makes it into central Florida. So I think we're going to see those hurricane force winds diminish, and it could even be weakening into a tropical storm, I think, by tomorrow afternoon. So I don't want to make you think this is going to be still a major hurricane by tomorrow, but we're still looking at some pretty strong winds here on the backside of the system through tomorrow afternoon, at least some very gusty winds up to tropical storm strength. And then by Friday morning, you can see the worst of the winds lift up over northeastern parts of Florida. So unfortunately, this storm is just crawling. And still on Friday, our winds are going to be coming in onshore from the Gulf of Mexico. And so that's why we're saying it's going to take some time before the water eventually goes back out into the Gulf. I know it's scary, and it's worst case scenario here for Southwest Florida. This is the storm that we did not want, but this is a bad one, we know.
This is probably not the best way to show this on TV, but Jason, you were mentioning earlier this tide graphic that's in the downtown Fort Myers area. What I'm going to try and do is just see if it would come through on there. Looking at, it's not really going to work.
Let's see if we can, wonder if we can tap, try to just tilt it. There we go. Okay, so let me just, we'll describe what we're looking at. So this is from downtown Fort Myers, Rob?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to, yeah, I don't know. Okay, well, I don't think that's going to work.
The point of the graph, though, is to show you how the water levels in the Fort Myers area have changed. And the most recent water report had it peaking at 8.4 feet, which is, obviously well up and above the, the high tide cycle that you had just brought up there. So, that storm surge flooding that they're noticing in downtown Fort Myers, based on the water gauges reports there, it's up at around 8.42 feet is the preliminary figure right now, based on that gauge station.
Is that the same measurement, when the National Hurricane Center was predicting a possible surge of anywhere from 12 to 18 feet? Is that what they mean, or is this a different metric?
Based on what we're seeing, so I believe this is in the right next to the river, right? Right next to the.
I believe it's real close to the two bridges, yeah.
Yep. All right. So yeah, I mean that's what we mean by storm surge. So we're talking about a water level rise.
It could have been even worse.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were talking 12 to 18 feet,
yes,
and it's been this bad, I mean.
But remember too that the winds on the backside of the storm we still have to deal with. It's still pushing water up into the Caloosahatchee.
Okay.
So we could see those water level rises higher than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask if that's the same metric.
Exactly.
When we
right. Yep.
talk about this is what the National Hurricane Center is predicting, or as a possible worst case scenario, realistic worst case scenario, and that number that Rob just gave out, we're talking about the same thing.
Exactly. Okay. That's exactly right. Yeah. Let's go to Doppler 2 if we can. Yeah, Doppler 2.
Yeah, Doppler 2 is back to the radar picture that we have here across this area. So I just wanted to make sure that we're keeping folks in DeSoto County, and for those of us who can hear or watch us in Sarasota and Western Charlotte, apprised to what's been going on. For the majority of the area, the worst of the winds, like that 126 gust we had over Captiva, that's now well to the north, but it's all what's left of it now with this eye moving again across DeSoto County, this core of Sarasota here, especially to near the Northport area, and then across communities in the western side of Charlotte County. If we could lapse the radar, I'm going to pull this back. We'll pull this back 8 hours. Kelly was mentioning about the point of landfall there. So there it was just after 12 o'clock this afternoon. There's through the 1 o'clock hour, 2 o'clock hour. Here's through the 3.
And it made landfall where on?
Cayo Costa, if I'm not mistaken, was the landfall.
They said there were 2 landfalls, actually. Is that because it passed over maybe on the water again in the Bayside and then hit Charlotte?
I think the official word from National Hurricane Center was Cayo Costa at the exact same spot where Hurricane Charlie hit.
The path certainly, it followed right up, it's going up US 17 right now, so it certainly followed the path of the Peace River, which of course is what Charlie did, is it leveled, much of downtown Punta Gorda, back, what was it, in 2000.
But of all places, tiny little Cayo Costa.
So that's what we're dealing with right now, again, as we keep folks here in DeSoto County and Charlotte County apprised of what's been going on. I'm going to go back over to the wall just for a moment here and try to do one of those pixel query points across DeSoto. I would imagine the electricity, as Jason pointed out not long ago, nearly everyone in DeSoto County is without electricity right now. So if you're watching us on the, or if you're rather listening to us on the radio, right now on the radar reflectivity, the most substantial reflectivity is just to the north and to the west of the city of Arcadia. And that's also where the worst of the winds are here, as you continue to feel the impacts of the eye, or what's left of the eye, moving across DeSoto County. A closer examination of the radar here, and I'm going to pixel query some of these points. The first areas that I'm going to point out would be to the northeast of the city of Arcadia. Wind reports here, again, up and aloft, are ranging between 31 and 74 miles per hour. And then if we move over here to the west and northwest of the city of Arcadia, right now aloft, up in the atmosphere, at beam height here, we're noticing wind value reports that range from 47 to more than 94 miles per hour across into the west of US 17 and to the northwest of the city of Arcadia. Remember, again, we're talking about beam height on this particular wind graphic. So it doesn't necessarily mean that's what's happening down on the Earth's surface, but it can give you a good idea as to what the winds are doing here across this part of DeSoto County. As again, what's left of the eye continues to move to the north-northeast, eventually pulling into areas of Hardy County toward Wauchula, and then eventually pulling away from Arcadia. But because the forward speed of the eye is, again, only at 8 miles an hour to the north-northeast, it will still be a good long while here before things that pull, calm down across areas of Charlotte County, most especially. If I could, may I pass things over to ABC 7 Chief Meteorologist John Patrick. John, are you there?
No, it's me, Rob. Let me get it together and then...
Oh, I apologize.
Whenever you're done, though, I want to go over some of the high tide times.
If I could, then let me send things over. We'll keep it here in this studio. Jason Dunning wanted to touch base on these tide cycles because this is a really important part of the story here with the ongoing risk of storm surge overnight tonight. So Jason, if I could pass things over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So this is the critical time for storm surge for Lee and Charlotte County as we get into the evening. Let's take Doppler 1 if we can. And I'm going to read off to you some of these high tide times. So for Fort Myers, this is downtown Fort Myers along the Caloosahatchee. The high tide time was at 7:06. So I think the water probably at its highest point right now, and then it subsides a little bit as we head through the night. The low tide at 12:47, so that's after midnight tonight. Now keep in mind the winds are still going to be pushing onshore. So it's not like the water is going to exit quickly. It's just probably going to stabilize. St. James City, another spot in Lee County, high tide was at 4:28 this afternoon. Low tide is at 9:19 tonight. We'll take a closer look at Charlotte County to go over those high tide times. Trying to read this, yeah, Inglewood, Lemon Bay, right there along the coast at 4:01. Now, Punta Gorda had a high tide time not too long ago, a couple hours ago at 6:04. Low tide tonight for Punta Gorda is at 11:30 p.m. And we'll touch on Collier County because we've seen some really devastating storm surge. It happened first in Collier County because they were the first to see the onshore winds on the backside of Hurricane Ian. But you can see there the Naples, I wish I didn't have bad vision. Let me look over here. Naples outer coast here. Yeah, high tide at 2:45 this afternoon. So that's why we saw those major storm surge videos, the devastating winds a little bit earlier this afternoon. And then Big Marco River at 3:21. And then the low tide for them coming up at 9:25.
So I guess we're lucky now that we're approaching low tide there in the Collier County coast, considering what they went through then earlier today. Finally, at least the astronomical tides are starting to move more in our favor.
But then, tomorrow's high tide cycles, the water will likely come back up, not as high as what we're going to see tonight, but it's going to take a while.
We can. Yes, thank you.
From earlier today, Madison.
The Meadow source has something up. I believe that's of downtown Fort Myers. We're talking so much about the river district there. So the Meadow source for our control room. We have some video from earlier today.
Madison, talking to our producer for a moment. Okay, this is downtown Fort Myers flooding. we've definitely seen worse in this storm, so hopefully this is the extent of it. But there's still a lot of businesses down there, a lot of people who rely on their livelihood down there, and that's definitely going to take a long, long time to clean up.
And of course, downtown is along the Caloosahatchee, and that is definitely a lot of storm surge there. So we have some video to show you of the Caloosahatchee as well. There we go. That's video, and you can see that little pier from Fort Myers Beach.
Actually,
what we're seeing.
Actually, Kelly, that photo that's of North Fort Myers. I believe it's like where the Best Western is as you cross the 41 bridge going into North Fort Myers. I think that's called North Shore Park.
Okay, right on the other side.
Yeah, because off on the right is a High Point place in the downtown Fort Myers area, and then to the left, that other high-rise is.
Yep, you see it.
I can't remember the name of it. It's closer to where the Oasis is at.
Right, and so that's right near the bridge going between North Fort Myers and the city of Fort Myers as well, and the Caloosahatchee, and you can see part of the pier is just simply gone. So this video was taken this afternoon. It wasn't even at the height of the storm. You can see because the winds are now whipping up like we've seen how awful it has been. Madison, do you have any other videos we can show our viewers and describe to our radio listeners? Okay, this is from Island Vista.
North Fort Myers. Let's see what's going on there. Oh, this is bad wind damage. Showing different pictures of the super windy conditions up in Island Vista, North Fort Myers, right along the river, fences torn apart, the kind of things, if you can't watch this right now, you're listening, that you would expect from wind damage. They had the eye go, if not right over that part of Southwest Florida, then very, very close. We're talking 130-mile-per-hour winds probably. And
the problem is that the storm surge in a lot of these communities continues. The water has not receded, so any flooding that is there is going to continue into the night. And when it gets dark, and water and darkness are very, very scary.
This is the Davis Mobile Home Park in Iona. So back to kind of South Fort Myers, Iona, McGregor area. Davis Mobile Home Park.
Underwater, basically. How else do you describe it?
Like it's underwater.
These are whole mobile home parks that are going to be torn down, probably. That's the only way you can describe it. You can't do anything but tear down, complete tear downs in situations like this. The water's just too damaging.
I just hope people listened, listen to the evacuation warning that if you're in a mobile home, you have to leave, and they left. And tomorrow, they do not go into these communities, and 5 people, elderly people, people who got stranded, stuck there, dead or alive. And that is my greatest fear tomorrow, when the sun comes up and the water goes down, what we are going to find in some of these communities. I think it is going to be absolutely devastating.
I was trying not to, I don't know if it was just my human psyche trying not to go there, but I think that's absolutely realistic based on how many just viewer messages we were getting this morning saying, is it too late to evacuate? And look, folks, I know this evacuation order came super late, and those will be questions for another day. But we know that a lot of people who were in the mandatory evacuation zones chose to stay or couldn't get out in time. And with what we're seeing with the damage, the wind damage, the storm surge damage, it will not be stunning.
Right, and my neighbor has her 9-year-old mother and 9-year-old mother-in-law with her. She went and got them and brought them to her home. What about people who don't have someone to go get them from one of these mobile homes or one of these ground floor condos and bring them to their home and had no transportation to a shelter, or were too afraid to go to one of the shelters that opened. All of those people that were left behind. I mean, we talked on the air, the people who were stranded on Fort Myers Beach, on the barrier islands. I had someone text me from Health Park saying that staff members there are, you know, they're working, but they're crying because they can't get in touch with their families, and they're afraid that when they go back to the island, whenever that might be, there might be death.
It's human nature, too, to think it's not going to happen to me. Not just with a catastrophic storm, in a lot of aspects of life. We always just talk ourselves into thinking, I'll be okay.
You and I were sitting at our desks looking out the window saying, oh, it's coming down now.
Because we're trying,
yes,
wishful thinking is just a built-in trait for a lot of people.
Slowing down,
and they just think, you know, I got this, I've rode out storms before, I don't want to leave my house, and then it's a pain in the butt to get back. And we get it, but this was the one when you really needed to go, and we hope and pray that most people, I hope you're wrong.
If I am,
and you're usually right.
Tomorrow,
and Kelly's usually right, but I hope you are wrong on this. But we've got
absolutely wrong.
We've got a bad feeling about this one.
And it's not over yet.
Yep.
So where are we going now?
Jim Dickey. Yep. ABC 7 meteorologist Jim Dickey is standing by. Jim?
Hey there, Peter. Yeah, you know, Peter actually talked about it just as the storm was coming in, that by all appearances this was going to be the big one. It definitely is. We'll be talking about this storm in Southwest Florida 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now. This will be the benchmark storm for Southwest Florida, Hurricane Ian. That is still a major hurricane. And so we're still in storm tracking mode. I wish I could say we're finished with this storm, but there's still an area of very strong winds, and I don't want to leave out our neighbors in DeSoto County right now, still in Charlotte County, in Punta Gorda. You are still on the backside of the Eyewall of Hurricane Ian. You've gotten the front Eyewall, the forward Eyewall in Punta Gorda, the backside of it. Now you're getting the very bottom of the storm. In fact, we look at the wide view of this, and you can still make out the vague sort of ghost of what was the main circulation around Ian as it moved its way onshore. Very faint now, very faint reflectivities going back through the Bell, and then all the way back around Arcadia. There's your wide circulation. Now, right now, the heaviest of the rain is focused on the northwestern side. That's where the flood threat is going to be extreme as we go through the night, in particular north of our area, north of DeSoto County, right up the 17 corridor, which seems to be a favorite track for hurricanes to take here for whatever reason that may be. Charlie, you know, I heard Jason and Rob talking about it, went right up 17. Irma, for the most part, went right up 17. And here we are with Ian going right up 17 as well. But within this, I want to take a look at what some of the winds are showing up on the radar here right now as I jump into analysis mode and jump over to the velocities. The winds have certainly come down, so we're not seeing those high-end winds that we had as the storm moved in to Captiva, certainly. There you go. I thought for a second I wasn't going to get that velocity in with the data issues we're having. But as I grab some of these numbers, what we're dealing with wind-wise right now, and, you know, earlier on this morning we were talking about how by the time you get out to the Fort Myers area, taking the radar beam from the NWS in Ruskin up there, it was very far away, very high in the atmosphere. By the time the beam gets down to DeSoto County, it's only about 3,000 feet up. So these numbers are probably a little bit of an overestimate. Maybe take off 10 to 15 from them. We are still ripping out there in DeSoto County. There are still 99-mile-per-hour winds being detected by radar. Again, you take 20 off of that, we're still seeing winds of hurricane force in Arcadia right now. Northport, still estimates of 90-mile-per-hour winds. Look at that, 109. Still in Punta Gorda, we continue to track the back edge, this back eye wall. So let's get to some of the good news, when this will finally start to let up. Let me take that circle off for you, and I'll track the forward speed of this back edge of the eye wall. It is held on that forward motion. Sammy, the latest advisory, it's still northeast at 9, correct? Northeast at 8, so it has slowed down a little bit. But I'm going to track the back edge of this eye wall. So this is when you can expect the worst of the winds to finally be past your location. Now, I don't want you to think that we're done with the winds entirely out there. In fact, Sammy, if you have that graphic ready with the tropical storm force wind field, get that ready up on Doppler 2, and we'll take that in a moment. But stay here on Dop 1 with me for a second, and we'll put this out forward in time to track the back edge of the Eyewall. So again, this is when the worst of the winds will begin to wind down for various locations across the area. We have another hour to go in Punta Gorda. We have another hour or so in Port Charlotte as well. So I continue to put that out in time. Arcadia, we still have a ways to go. Now, you're going to get into the clearer eye. So the winds are really strong right now, and then they're going to die down when you get into the eye, and then they're going to come back up. So I know you're going to be tempted when the winds come down and you get into that eye to maybe get out there, see what's going on with all those winds, but stay put. And this goes for all Southwest Florida. Stay put tonight. I know that's tough. This is especially true for those of you that aren't in the surge zones, but you have the wind damage in your yard. Stay put until the sun comes up, because we don't know what's out there. We don't know if there's power lines down. You don't know where there's various trees down. Just stay put for tonight if you can manage it. That's the safest thing to do. Certainly do not go out on the roadways. There you go. Arcadia, we're talking midnight is when we start to see the winds die down in Arcadia. So this remains an extreme wind threat. The high-end winds will be coming down. The wind speeds will be coming down. I think in the next couple of hours, we're going to lose the 90, 100-mile-per-hour winds being replaced by 70, 80-mile-per-hour winds. But think about it. That's still much higher than what we consider a wind produced by a severe thunderstorm, which is 58 miles per hour. So even as these winds die down, if this were, say, in our dry season, we would be telling you about the threat for these winds from thunderstorms. Sam, if you have that graphic up, you know, we heard the sheriff in Lee County talk about how they can't go out yet until we get out of the tropical storm force wind field. So if you can take Doppler 2 now, Sammy Squires has put together this graphic showing you the timing, and this is straight from the Hurricane Center, the timing of when those tropical storm force winds will finally exit the area. The area in yellow, which is much of Collier County, including Naples, including Marco Island, including many of those hardest hit storm surge areas along the coast in Collier, your tropical storm force winds will come to an end right about 5 a.m., if not a little bit earlier, so the early morning hours. As we go into Lee County and western Hendry County, 5 to 7 a.m., it's still going to be until between 7 and 9 o'clock tomorrow morning before we get those tropical storm force winds to exit Punta Gorda, to exit Charlotte County, to exit DeSoto County. So again, and we were telling you this in the lead up to the storm, a very slow moving storm. We're also seeing some, again, very heavy rainfall. I'll switch over to take a look at that. The rainfall rates in northern DeSoto County right now, prolific rain. We're talking rainfall rates of 6 inches an hour. And while a lot of times I show you these numbers and I talk about how, you know, we're not going to see this type of rain for an entire hour, so don't put too much stock in it, this rain isn't moving all that much. So especially north of Arcadia and up through parts of Hardy County, including Wauchula, up through Bowling Green, again, that 17 corridor is going to see significant freshwater flooding here this evening. Now, our rain has really wound down. Overall, I actually want to go ahead and take a look at some of those rainfall rates. We'll go through and see how much rain we've picked up through this. You know, for all the various impacts we've seen from Ian, maybe the one sort of piece of good news is that many of us avoided the very heavy rainfall with this one. We can't say that about those that got into the northern side of the eye, where that rain is still going in northwestern Charlotte County, in northwestern DeSoto County. Those spots in around Arcadia, we've picked up 13.7 inches estimated on Doppler radar so far from this storm, 11.7 inches there in Punta Gorda. But note, some of our inland areas, you know, we've likely seen a little more than what this is spitting out, but LaBelle, Immokalee, 1 inch or 2. That's no more than a rainy season thunderstorm. Of course, those rain totals pick up as you got into those whipping rain bands, but even in Cape Coral, 4.5 inches of rain. So the highest rain totals are definitely off on the northwestern side of the eye, and we'll take another look here at what we're looking at radar-wise, the rain threat is over and done with. South of the Caloosahatchee now, there's a little bit of light rain wrapping around the southern side of the eye into LaBelle, nearing Cape Coral. But for the most part, the rain is done for you. Meanwhile, we still have extreme rain, heavy rainfall, and very strong winds continuing for the next hour in Punta Gorda, continuing until about midnight in Arcadia. So especially in Charlotte County, in DeSoto County, I know you're anxious to get out now at this point, but hang tough, hang tight, stay in your safe space until these stronger winds roll out. From there, I'll toss it back to the NBC studio. Get a look at some of what's going on out there across the area right now.
Jim, thank you. We're just doing some stuff behind the scenes here.
Talking to people, making sure everything's okay.
We have, we're juggling a lot of balls right now, as I'm sure you can understand. Kelly's talking to people, trying to...
I can come over there, sure.
Allison's going to come over for a second. It's high time for a regroup here with our favorite meteorologist.
The team back together.
Yeah, we're still kind of, I think the winds are still pretty damaging out there. You know, we're assessing if we should go look to see what's going on, and I just think it's still so windy out there, and we were showing how big those wind fields are. It's still expansive.
Talking about sending the crews out into the field, and you're just not comfortable quite with it yet.
Yeah, I think it's even last night, just kind of driving around, you know, the waters are filled with potholes, and now we know what's in them. I have no idea. So it's just still so much unknown. It's so dark. There's absolutely no light out there. It's
probably not going to be till first thing in the morning when we can realistically and safely get our crews out there and even have the ability to show you the extent of the damage.
And for us to even be able to go home, because we're stuck here for the night because it's too dangerous to drive home, and we're just trying to contact our families, and we know everyone out there it's so nerve-wracking for you. Well, we feel it too.
Right, and I'm sure if you are over on maybe you're streaming us and you're on the other side of the state and you're thinking,
I hope you are.
I hope you are too. I hope you're safely in a dry home with
a nice dinner,
with a nice cold beer.
Exactly.
Or two after today.
Hopefully I'm sure you're curious. You're like, you know, we're getting these pieces of video and we keep showing them and trying to give exact where they are. And I'm sure you're at home a little anxious saying, well, what about my neighborhood? What about my neighborhood? So we're going to get those answers tomorrow. And I wouldn't get on the road and head back tomorrow because we don't know how fast this water's going to go away.
Someone just asked me. They said, I was in Zone A in Lee County, the biggest flooding situation, and they said, should I come back tomorrow or should I wait till Friday? And I told her Friday at the earliest.
I mean, we have to wait.
The storm surge is still an issue tomorrow.
And power.
I mean, there's a million reasons, but the point is, this is going to take a while.
It's going to take a while, not only to see which area, all of the areas that are impacted, but also we need the water to go away, you know? And until that water goes away, we can't even begin to clean up.
And they certainly can't begin to restore power, at least in those specific areas. I mean, FP&L and LCEC, the places where they need to restore power aren't always in the exact spot that's out, but a lot of times they have to get on those specific streets in those neighborhoods where they've lost power and, you know, do their connections, and that is just not going to be realistic for a while.
And I think Jeff Butera talked to someone from FPL and said, this is more than putting up a few power lines back. We have to completely rework and rebuild the whole. This is going to take a long time.
I just look at that graphic you have of that hurricane.
Yeah, let's show you this.
Look at it behind us.
Doppler 1. I just want to show you the satellite. Take up Doppler 1 if you could. So this was earlier today. We lost a lot of data, so I'm not really sure exactly what time this was, but we know it made landfall about 3:05. So I'm going to step off screen for a second because I want to manually kind of walk you through how this eye of the storm came on through. So this must be a little bit after 3 because it made landfall in Cayo Costa at 3:05. It was approaching Sanibel and Captiva well before that, even in the 2 o'clock hour. So here we are around the 3 o'clock hour, maybe just after 3. That eye is so pronounced. Then we start to see it close up because it's making landfall. But then here is what I want you to watch. how that explosion, do you see in the northwest corner, that color of white? I'll go back a little bit. It just explodes again, and we get another burst of activity, and then it kind of regroups, kind of gets its act together again, more convection, and it takes so long to continue. I mean, we're still talking about a major hurricane right now. It's just so, the wind field just won't go away, and it's continuing to expand out. It's starting to diminish a little bit, slowly but surely. And at the same time, those winds continue to go out. We sit here at the station, we can still hear those hurricane force gusts occurring. So that convection occurred well into after landfall. And that, I think a lot of it had to do with how strong it was on the backside of that storm. It just kind of pushed it in and kept that organization going for longer and longer periods of time. Jason Dunning just made this great graph. So yellow colors are going to be those tropical storm force winds. Look how far north they go, just south of I-4, all the way down to Miami and Naples. So that's going to be wind speeds over 39 miles per hour. Then we still have our hurricane force winds here in orange, extending all the way to Bradenton, just south of St. Pete, all the way down to Cape Coral still. The eye of the storm, or the center of it, if you want to call it that, I wouldn't call it the eye so much anymore, into parts of DeSoto County, finally moving off to the north. But it's not going to be until maybe the overnight hours that the winds become a little bit more manageable, where it's not just roaring in your head of that sound and the noise of the wind coming through. They will calm down, and there will be some relief with those winds out of the northwest. That is still onshore. We talk about onshore winds all the time, but that onshore wind out of the northwest is not going to be as pronounced and as problematic as an onshore wind from the due west or from the southwest. That makes a big difference, and because it's going to be a lot lighter. The rainfall totals are continuing, and parts we saw those double-digit, I think Jim Dickey went over those double-digit rainfall totals in parts of Northport and up through DeSoto County. I was really concerned yesterday about where that band of 10, 15, 20 inches of rain was going to set up. So no one, it made landfall. We had the winds to worry about. Then we had the heavy 20 inches of rain to deal with, and then the storm surge all the way down the coast, even through Everglades City, saw the impact of that storm surge. This storm was so big, and that's why we have to never, I try to stress this on, I'm not sure if it was this morning or yesterday, but I tried to say, hey, we can't ascertain our risk based on past experiences. Every storm is completely different. This was totally different than Andrew. This was totally different than Charlie. This is totally different than Irma. This was even different. If it had any similarities into not our region, it would be up through Mexico Beach, because they had such powerful storm surge throughout their area. And we'll have to see in the morning, but it might be even more widespread than what moved through there. They're both, and remember, Hurricane Michael was a Category 5. This was just on the fringe of a Category 5 storm. So right now, looking at First Alert Live Doppler, we're starting to see lighter rain totals, and finally a little bit lighter of a wind farther south, but heavy rain continues through parts of Arcadia into North DeSoto County, pushing off to the north. This is a time lapse of the past 30 minutes. It continues to push off to the north along 17. We're seeing some light showers. So in DeSoto County, you guys are still in the thick of it here. I want to point out these bands out here into the Atlantic. We're zoomed out coming off Cape Canaveral here. This storm continues to fire up thunderstorms that could spill into Jacksonville, with more thunderstorms and tornadic possibilities as the storm continues to have the intensity that it even had just a couple of hours ago. Farther to the south, a time lapse here through parts of Lake County, through North Fort Myers, light rain stretching all the way back into Boca Graham, North Captiva, into Captiva. Remember, North Captiva became North Captiva from a hurricane. It used to be a part of Captiva, and that pass became because of a hurricane. Farther to the south, the Forum over to Lehigh Acres. I've had contact with a few people in Lehigh Acres, some trees down. If you guys get anything else, seems like Lehigh Acres does have some service, much better service than maybe we do west of 75. So let us know how you're doing there in Lehigh, stretching all the way to Alva. Getting some also reports of some flooding through parts of Fort Myers shores. Here's a look at some of those wind speeds Again, it is elevated. It is elevated, so it's not going to be this high, but it is still impactful. 110 mile per hour winds through Fort Ogden. So putting that down on the ground, no, 80, 90, still hurricane force. We're still in that hurricane force wind capacity through DeSoto and Charlotte County. When that's over, I will be first to tell you, when we are done with those hurricane force winds, unfortunately, we're just not done yet. And we're still going to have that specifically for DeSoto and Charlotte County. Madison, where are we going next now?
We have some updates we can
Okay,
give.
great. I'll give it to Peter and Kelly.
Give our viewers. And again, we understand that a lot of you don't have power, so you're probably listening to us or perhaps live streaming us. It's nearly 1.5 million households now are without power across the state. That's according to the Florida Department of Emergency Management. 1.5 million households, so double that or even triple it for the people in each household. So this is widespread power outages.
So Justin's going to get some sleep.
FP&L wants us to remind you that as soon as they can, they will get their line crews out there, but again, only when it's safe for their crews.
And remember, the electrical systems for water stations are out. There's a boil water advisory notice in effect for Sanibel, for Lee County. Pump stations, sewer systems, all of those things are not working right now because the electricity out, the power out, all of these infrastructure items are underwater.
We just, Cape Coral, just alerting us, please conserve water.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
So a lot of times you can't, don't flush your toilet. Hopefully you filled up your bathtub and you stocked up on water, drinking water and things like that. But this is why we tell you to go to fill up your bathtub with water or fill up old containers with water, because now you're going to need that for the next couple of days, likely to flush your toilet.
Or use your pool water, anything you have to help you out, because there is so much strain right now on the infrastructure of these cities and counties providing these utilities. Forget about the power. That's a whole different deal. But we're talking basic sewer and water right now that we take for granted in the United States. It is under stress right now. We saw what happened after Irma, where a lot of the pump stations in Collier County failed because they didn't have power and they were overwhelmed, and sewage started backing up into the streets. And I think that's what they're worried about happening again.
Yeah, I think it probably already happening again. The county manager saying that none of his staff, EOC, nobody's been able to get out and assess the situation. And it's dark now. It's still windy. It's still raining in some areas, and the water's high, so they won't get out again until tomorrow morning. So if you're listening to us, if you're streaming us from somewhere else, sit tight. We don't know yet. We're just sending our crews out maybe in the next hour if it gets safe. We will be here throughout the night, though. We're not getting off the air, likely for days, because we want to make sure that everybody gets all the information they need.
One of our crews in Collier County, where the conditions have improved more so than any other part of our viewing area, has actually been able to get out and do a little bit of assessment and talk to people. NBC2's Ryan Arbogast has this report.
Hey guys, Ryan Arbogast here with the Collier County News team. Wanted to give you a brief update on what's going on down here in Collier, especially in Naples. We just stepped outside of our bureau for the first time now since about 8 a.m. this morning, after our teams over at NBC2 and ABC7 gave us the all clear that it's at least a little safer to step outside. We took a drive down 41 right behind me, but you can see the wind is going crazy right now and it's pitch black, and that's exactly what we saw out there, plus a ton of flooding. Hundreds, if not thousands of streets with feet of water, completely impassable, and yet we saw hundreds of cars on the road. We want to remind everyone it is not safe to be out right now. You need to be using as much caution as possible. There is a stay-at-home notice right now and a curfew that's been issued, so make sure you're not traveling out on the roads unless you absolutely need to. We saw tons of downed power lines, debris, accidents, and live wires. Everyone, be careful, be smart, and be safe. Reporting in Collier County, Ryan Arbogast, back to you guys.
Yeah, I really wish we could say, too, that we're finished with the strong winds from Ian, but we're not. We're still in the tracking mode, unfortunately, with this storm. If you think back to some of the other hurricanes we've had, they moved pretty quickly out of the area. You know, Irma was about an 8-hour event from landfall to when it exited north. We've been tracking these winds all day long. We're still tracking wind gusts near 100 miles per hour in parts of southwest Florida. Now, these numbers have definitely come down, and they've come down as they're closer to Tampa's radar, so we can say with confidence, and we're getting sort of confirmation from the Hurricane Center with each of their updates, that Ian is weakening, that those winds, those high-end wind speeds are starting to fall. But even that being said, our inland communities and Charlotte County still seeing these winds, 97-mile-per-hour winds being detected by Tampa's radar. Now, by the time you get to the beam here, by the time the beam rather gets to Punta Gorda, it's about 3,500 feet up in the air, so you can take some off of that, but you're still at least gusting to 80. Punta Gorda, I mean, we've gotten each side of that Eyewall. It's basically been a worst-case wind scenario for Punta Gorda. We tell you all the time how these storms are different, and the storm of record before this one was, of course, Charlie in Charlotte County. Remember, Charlie had that 10-mile wide eye. It was an extreme windstorm, no doubt, but it blew right through and caused that very localized extreme wind damage for, an hour at most with its quick forward speed. These have been winds comparable to Charlie in some spots, and they've lasted for hours. So while, trees can take a quick burst of wind sometimes, you do that for hours on end, and that just ups the threat for wind damage. So again, we're still tracking those high-end winds, a little bit lower in Arcadia, but as I switch back over to Tampa's radar, we can sort of see what we're dealing with as far as the structure of the storm. When hurricanes get away from water, they weaken. The land interaction, the friction with land and getting away from the warm water they use as fuel helps to cut into the core. So this is no longer anywhere near the storm structurally it was when it moved its way onshore, but you can make out at least the northwestern side of the Eyewall, which has still held itself together very well, and that's where the winds will be at their most extreme. We're still seeing those winds in around Arcadia, like I said, down through Punta Gorda. I want to track the very back edge, the southwestern side here of the Eyewall, because that represents, as this finally departs southwest Florida, as this finally moves its way out of Charlotte County, out of DeSoto County, when we will start to see those winds let up. So I want to track this for you here. And I know he just zoomed in the camera, but I'm going to unfortunately move back so I can draw that track. The forward motion still about 8 miles per hour with this storm. It has slowed slightly as it's moved its way in. Let me go ahead and get that track on there again for you. Moving to the north and east, the north-northeast at only 8 miles per hour. So again, we are far from finished with these strong winds, but we can see the end game in sight now as far as the worst of the winds. They're already past us now. We're still dealing with the hurricane force winds, the 100 or so mile per hour wind gusts, and some times for you here as I track the back edge. And every time I draw these tracks, the number is going to be a little bit different depending on exactly where I put it. But Pine Lakes by 8:51, Punta Gorda, we have about another hour to go before the winds will die down. Port Charlotte, similar story. Now, Arcadia, you're in the middle of the storm. I know we're talking a lot about how the winds have died down. We're not focusing as much now on the current conditions in Lee County and Collier County as far as the winds are concerned. But for you in DeSoto County, we are, again, right in the heart of this, and it's still going to take quite a while for this to clear out. As I put this forward out in time, we're talking not until after midnight does our threat for the very strong wind gusts come into play. So if you can manage it, what I want you to do, if you're listening, if you're watching from Arcadia, as you plan out where you're going to try to go to bed tonight, you want to find that interior room, set up your sleeping bags, set up your cots in there. That's where you want to camp out here tonight, as unfortunately these winds for at least the next couple of hours will not be letting up just yet. And we can go through our storm tracker model here, an indication of when the wind gusts will really start to come down. So we're still seeing those gusts over hurricane force now. That's confirmed from what our model is saying. As we go forward in time, the sheriff was talking about how we need to get the winds below tropical storm force before crews can get out there, can start to assess the damage, can start rescue operations. So we're talking about the winds coming down below 40 miles per hour. On this model, we have the winds still in that range, even as we go to 2 a.m. In fact, you know, as hurricanes weaken sometimes, as that inner core begins to fall apart and collapses, the wind field, the overall wind field, begins to expand. So while the hurricane itself is weakening and moving away from us, combined with that, the tropical storm force wind field is starting to expand a little bit. And you can see the evidence of that on our model here, still holding with tropical storm force winds all across southwest Florida as we get to 2 and 3 a.m. We still have tropical storm force winds by 4 and 5 a.m. Now there you go, 5 a.m. on the dot. This is when the winds are really starting to come down. So I think Collier County, 5 a.m. is just about the edge of when we'll start to see the winds truly subside down to much calmer levels. Numbers start to come down in Lee County at this time, and I think by 6 and 7 a.m. for Lee County, that's when the winds died down for you. We're going to have to wait until about 9, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Again, we're still talking 12 hours from now in Charlotte County and DeSoto County before the winds do truly die down out there across the area. And I do want to mention as well, as we get back to the radar presentation, the very heavy rain that's falling at this hour as well, from Punta Gorda through Northport up through Arcadia. And you look at the wide view, there's not much rain going south of the Caloosahatchee, and I'm not expecting much additional rainfall now that the dry air has really worked its way into the southeastern side. But on the northern side, there's still that front we talked about all week long. As the circulation from Ian sort of butts heads up against that, there's this corridor of just torrential rainfall here in northern DeSoto County, lifting its way slowly off to the north and northeast. Now, the extreme rain has exited, for the most part, DeSoto County. This is going to be more of a flood threat into central Florida, a flooding rain threat, but we're still going to track that back edge, the western Eyewall, scraping by DeSoto County. Again, the timing, what I already showed you there, right about midnight is when that rain should let up. So, like I said, I know we're winding the impacts down across much of the area as far as the strongest of the winds, as far as the peak of the storm surge, but we're in the heart of the impacts still in much of Charlotte County and for certain in DeSoto County. And we're going to stick with tracking the storm for those of you in the heart of the storm here throughout the evening on ABC 7 and NBC 2. I'll send it back to the studio now from here.
Jim, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You always take precedent, my friend. You are giving us information everyone needs.
If it's possible, if there's any way to route boxes here between myself and Jim, I just wanted to thank Jim for bringing up that point. For folks in DeSoto County, it's approaching 9 o'clock at night. Like my colleague Jim Dickey just mentioned, and if it's possible to put him in a squeeze box here, thank you for bringing up that point about finding a place to sleep that is safe tonight in areas across DeSoto County, like the city of Arcadia. Jim, offer, if you would, perhaps some suggestions for someone who might be in their house tonight. They're still hunkered down in the worst of this. What if they're looking around their house and what might be available on hand? What might you suggest to someone? Where's a safe place for them to sleep tonight if they're watching in DeSoto County or in the city of Arcadia most specifically?
Sure. You know, Rob, when we're in this part of the storm, I actually think of you because I think back to our coverage of Irma, and one of maybe the big regrets I have is that as Irma's core was moving out, I feel like we sort of let our pedal off the gas as far as the winds that were going through DeSoto County as the winds were dying down in much of Lee County and Charlotte County and Collier. So that's why we're staying focused there here this evening too. And like Rob said, so what you want to look for, your strategy is to find that interior room that can put as many walls between you and those winds. So as I think around my home, you know, I have one of those water closets in my bathroom. I have the bathroom, the shower, you know, the sinks and all that, but I have that extra door that opens up to where the toilet is, but that door shuts, and now I'm surrounded by 4 walls and just that one door. Now I have as many walled off surfaces between me and the winds as I could possibly have. That would be my safe space. A closet works, especially an interior closet, maybe a laundry room. Those are going to be your best bets. And, you know, if you don't have anything that fits that description, just try to limit the number of windows and doors as much as you possibly can. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, we really just have to make the best of what we have here available to you. You know, if you have a twin-size mattress, those are a bit more maneuverable. You know, haul one out of your kid's bedroom and bring that down. If for folks in DeSoto County, the safest place for you to be tonight is in the lower part of your home. The coastal communities have been the ones that have had to evacuate upward because of the rising storm surge flooding. But in inland areas where this high wind threat continues tonight, especially in DeSoto County, as opposed to being high in the air, you want to be as low to the ground as possible, pending you're not in an area with freshwater rain flooding. So the situation depends on what you see outside your window right now. If your home is not flooded, you're safest on the lowest level of your home in DeSoto County because you're hiding from the wind right now. But if you're in an area with floodwaters, you just have to make a case-by-case scenario and see what's safest for you and your family based on the situation that you're presented with here tonight.
Right, yeah, for sure. You don't want to stay in the water, that's for sure. So, you know, go to the second floor of your home. And then same strategy, you know, that maybe that closet in the bedroom upstairs, maybe if there's room in there, that would be a good place to go. Again, the strategy in general, get as many walls between you and the winds as you can as you try to settle in here tonight.
Yeah, well, thank you again very much, Jim, for bringing up that really important point, because this is going to be such a stressful night for our neighbors in parts of Charlotte County and Sarasota County and DeSoto County, where this high wind threat continues in earnest here tonight. Jim, I'll take things for a moment. I'll let you catch your breath, and we'll talk to you back in just a few minutes, if you would. What I wanted to do is to give some perspective for folks in DeSoto County, the city of Arcadia, and for those who are watching the live stream who evacuated from parts of Southwest Florida, what our neighbors are going through right now in the city of Arcadia. So if I could ask the control room to route to Doppler 2 as our source, and eventually we'll make our way over top of the wall here. This is going back in time, so we're looking at 3:33 this afternoon. That is when the leading edge of the Eyewall started to initially move into just to the south of the city of Arcadia. And look at how the past few hours have evolved here. The Eyewall is moving so slowly, last pegged at just 8 miles an hour to the north-northeast, that these folks in DeSoto County have quite literally been in this since about 3:30 this afternoon, and it continues here tonight. You know, the current time is now, we're just a few seconds away from the top of the 9 o'clock hour, and look at how that radar has evolved. Things are still very, very serious, and that extreme wind warning continues for DeSoto County, Charlotte County, and Sarasota County, if I'm not mistaken, through 9:30 tonight. And to give you some, again, perspective on the reason for that extreme wind warning in these parts of our community, I'm going to turn on the interactive hand tracker. So eventually here for the control room, I'm just going to make my way over to the wall. So just give me a moment to collect the right materials that I'll need. So for the folks who are watching in, again, DeSoto County, I had a viewer message not long ago that they were curious about what was going on in Burnt Store Marina. So along this Burnt Store Road corridor here that links up western Charlotte County south of the city of Punta Gorda and into areas of northwest Lee County, you know, the worst of it for you continues to pull away from your community as the worst of the weather continues to be up here across areas of DeSoto and up to the north and northeast of the Deep Creek area. But the winds continue to be very, very strong here across this part of Burnt Store Marina. So for the viewer who messaged me about that, I forgot to turn the hand tracker tool on. Give me 1 second.